hashtag Climate Promise on your social media accounts. And we are also live now on YouTube. So if you want to share the proceedings of day one, you can share this link. We will share the link in the few here on the chat box. And if you want to chat with our co-attendees right now, you can just use this chat box right now so we can start collaborating with everyone. And once again, welcome to our day one. So let's all watch the videos of our co-convening partners.
Hi, my name is Shaan and I'm from the small island of Sabah, Malaysia. So basically, I'm part of the Kadazan indigenous tribe and I'm one of the co-founders of my non-profit organization. It's a student-led non-profit organization where we try to reduce education inequality in Malaysia by helping students, especially from the indigenous community, to actually strive towards tertiary education. I feel that it's quite an interesting concept whereby we are actually encouraged to actually present on our own rather than just listening, because I believe that from what I learned, we actually through this movers program, we actually have to teach other people to become movers too. It's not like a lecturer giving a talk. It's more like a one-on-one peer conversation that you can actually meet people of the same kind, of the same mindset. And I feel that if we ourselves go towards our community and actually share about this movers program, they would actually listen to us more compared to people from the outside, because we're part of their community and we have their trust. And through this movers program, who knows, you might get inspired and you might inspire another person to get inspired, and you'll create a ripple effect of force, and we could inspire everyone one day.
What is the Paris Agreement? The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. This requires economic and social transformation to face the climate challenges now and moving into the future, based on the best available science. The Paris Agreement works on a 5-year cycle of increasingly ambitious climate action. By 2020, countries communicate their plans, known as nationally determined contributions. Countries communicate actions they will take to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in order to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. Countries also communicate actions they will take to build resilience to adapt to the impacts of rising temperatures. This may include information on adaptation and finance flows. The Paris Agreement also provides a framework for financial, technical, and capacity building support to those countries who need it. Starting in 2024, countries report transparently on actions taken. Collective progress under the Paris Agreement will be assessed through a global stocktake. This will lead to recommendations for countries to set more ambitious plans in the next round.
Can you tell me in your own words how you see the climate crisis affecting your country? What do you see is happening?
Cyclone Winston was the strongest cyclone ever struck Fiji. I saw houses blown away. Our school was destroyed.
I was visiting family back in Northern California when the Paradise Fire broke out. I had to roll up wet towels, put them under windows and doors, since the smoke was seeping into my home.
We heard voices screaming outside. We just stand outside praying for the fire not to reach our homes.
Many people died.
Our farms were destroyed. Our crops were washed away.
I really saw flooding and ice kept melting.
The summers are really, really hot.
The snow melts immediately.
In the rainy seasons, when it should rain, it doesn't rain.
And sometimes it's raining that much that the river comes up to danger mark.
Every time we have these heavy rains, our school closes.
The economy is really impacted.
All the memories that were made in that place, like the places where we used to have fun and enjoy, are slowly disappearing.
I was on school and then I heard about climate change.
I saw many people talking about it on social media.
I started to see how communities were being impacted all around the world.
And then I was asking myself, what was happening?
I just wanted to contribute and help out.
Who inspired me was Greta Thunberg. Greta and her movement.
She's just straight to the point and she's not afraid to speak up for what she believes.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I'm 16 years old and I'm a climate activist from Sweden. I learned more and more about how serious the situation was. I couldn't understand why everyone else was just continuing like before, not doing anything, not caring about this.
We deserve a safe future and we demand a safe future. Is that really too much to ask?
Adults look at us like us kids, and they don't really take us seriously.
Some people, they don't even think about it.
They're saying, oh, you're too young for this, you're not supposed to be doing this.
They don't really understand the climate crisis, so they need to know the climate science. What keeps me going despite the challenges is that I'm in solidarity with so many activists all around the world.
All the other activists who are fighting every day, I think they inspire me a lot.
I want other young people not to think of how young are they or how small are they.
We can do something about this. If we really want to make a change, it's about every person individually.
Our future, the kids' future will be affected.
It's happening right now. We're already late on our schedule.
We live in the same planet.
We have to come together. It's not an option.
As the climate crisis continues to get more urgent, we want you to all take action as well and make your voices heard too.
I don't want to just stand aside and watch. I want to participate. I want to push as hard as I can in the right direction. And I've just decided to do everything I can.
Okay, so good afternoon once again to all of our delegates for our day one here at the Regional Dialogue. I hope you are all excited because all of us from UNDP are really excited and all our co-convening partners. So, of course, as we begin, may we request everyone to please continue using our official hashtag, that is hashtag climate promise. So our friends who are not right here on Zoom may be able to listen and maybe understand everything that you will learn today on day one, also on day two. So I can see that everyone's really excited on the chat box right now. So please continue the energy today and on day two. And we are about to begin. Once again, this is the Regional Dialogue on Youth Empowerment in Climate Action Day 1. So we are about to begin in a few minutes, so please continue using our official hashtag Climate Promise. Use that on your social media accounts. Whatever account you're using, what's important is we are able to transcend the message beyond social media. Share it to your friends, share it to your families, so we can all understand the climate crisis and our actions as a response to this crisis. Okay, so once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who are watching right now here on the Zoom room, also on YouTube. We are live on YouTube right now. I am Jules Giang, the Youth Empowerment Consultant of the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub, your host for this two-day virtual event. Okay? And amid the pandemic, of course, we continue our advocacy and strengthen our aspirations towards climate justice. Thus, we hold this dialogue to amplify the voices of sectors, particularly of all of you, the youth sector, in the climate discourse. So as we begin, may we, of course, share and thank our co-convening partners. This is brought to you by the UNDP Asia Pacific, UNICEF East Asia and Pacific, and UNICEF South Asia, the UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center, Bangkok, British Council, Youngo, Movers Program, and the 2030 Youth Force. Okay, so everyone, for your information, initially we designed this dialogue for only 150 youth participants, and obviously we were very glad and really overwhelmed with the registration, but we had an overwhelming response from all of you. We have received more than 2,000 registrations, and this is definitely a testament that the youth is really involved and resolved to become part of the climate dialogue. So, of course, in any webinar, we have our house rules, and it's very simple. Today and tomorrow's sessions will be recorded, but the recording of the parallel events tomorrow are for note-taking purposes only. And lastly, we encourage everyone to please participate and enjoy our sessions. And this is a safe space for everyone. So you can just share any thoughts, your thoughts about the climate crisis and climate discourse on the chat group. We also have a Facebook group. If you're interested, we'll send in the link later on here on the chat box. And you may also share and spread the word, all of your learnings real time on your social media accounts by using our official hashtag, that is hashtag climate promise. And we are also streaming on YouTube. So this is the link. So just copy the link if you want to share it to your friends who are not here on Zoom right now. So we are live streaming right now. So please kindly share your that link to your social media accounts. So now, as we begin with our opening session, to welcome all of you in our regional dialogue, please welcome the Assistant Secretary General and, of course, the Assistant Administrator and Director of the Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific, UNDP. Please welcome Kani Wignaraja.
Warm greetings to all the young changemakers and innovators, the government leaders and partners. Welcome to this regional dialogue on youth empowerment in climate action. According to a recent survey by UNDP and the University of Oxford called the People's Climate Vote, 64% of people around the world and 63% of people within the Asia-Pacific region recognize climate change as a global emergency. So most people get it. We know the window to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is closing fast. 2020 was one of the warmest years ever. Warming of our seas, destruction of forests and reefs, the intensity of cyclones, floods, and droughts, and only made worse by COVID and by inequalities and the injustices around us. The numbers and the evidence do not lie. We have to act with greater speed and with greater ambition to halt this slide. And it is young people like you who are speaking loudest about this. And since more than half of the world's young people live in Asia and the Pacific, you can do something about it. So I'm happy that we are launching this dialogue that brings you to the very front of the room so your voices can shape your future. The Asia-Pacific region remains the most vulnerable to these risks and the devastating impacts of climate change. We must do more to stop it. And we have a moment. This generation is at a critical juncture to make some very key choices in what gets produced and consumed, the kind of energy and transport we use, what we will put our investments and our voices behind and support, and what we just say no to. You know, a low carbon path will not happen by magic. We know this. It will take that sense of purpose and a change in all our behaviors. And the choices that governments and private sector make can be influenced by what we say and do. And it will be young people who will drive this change. So I am delighted that we have so many of you here with us today, together with government and other representatives from over 25 countries. And thank you to the teams across UNDP, UNICEF, UNFCCC, British Council, Young-Go, the Movers Program, and 2030 Youth Force, and so many others for bringing us together. We will be part of a movement to take the climate promise into climate action. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much to Kani Wignaraja of UNDP Asia and the Pacific for welcoming our virtual delegates. Let's give her a warm round of applause, a virtual round of applause. Okay, thank you so much for that message. She mentioned that 60+% understand that climate crisis is a real issue. And she also mentioned that more than half of young people across the world are here in Asia and the Pacific. And she also reiterated that we are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And as, of course, residents of this region, we certainly agree. So young people, especially in this region, should really drive this change. So once again, thank you so much for that message to Kani Wignaraja of the UNDP Asia and the Pacific. So at this point, of course, we'll proceed to another message. Let's hear it from the Regional Director for East Asia and the Pacific of UNICEF. Let's welcome Karen Hulshoff.
What a pleasure to be here today with you, respected government delegates, colleagues from UNDP, UNFCCC, British Council, Young-Go, partners from the civil society, private sector, and most importantly, our young people from across Asia Pacific. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to you all. On behalf of UNICEF, I'm really excited to be part of this initiative on youth empowerment and climate action in the region. The climate crisis, as you know, is also a child rights crisis. The climate crisis is the biggest challenge of our generation for all children and youth. We can simply not afford to ignore it. The climate crisis is a threat multiplier that worsens existing challenges to child health, nutrition, education, and protection. The World Health Organization estimates that over 80% of all illnesses, injuries, and death occurring due to climate change are in fact impacting on children, particularly those living in poor and underserved areas. A child born today will likely experience a world that is more than 4 degrees warmer than the pre-industrial average, with climate change impacting human health from infancy, adolescence, to adulthood and old age. As we gather here today, we know that we can reimagine a future post-COVID world for young people if we listen to their solutions, your solutions, and ideas on climate. Then we have the opportunity to accelerate climate actions in the region. The climate crisis is not something that one person, one organization, or one government can solve on their own. Together we can make a dent, a positive difference. UNICEF believes youth participation is much more than being seen. It is about having a voice, having a choice, being informed, engaged, and having an influence in decisions that impact one's life, in private and public spheres, including at home, school, community, and in governance processes. Young people should participate in decisions that impact their own lives. More than half of the world's adolescents live in Asia, some 650 million. And they will be the population of tomorrow who will bear the brunt of this climate crisis. Working with young people is the way to ensure social inclusion, stability, and progress in addressing the climate crisis. We all must participate, and we have to do it in a meaningful way, shaping your and our future together. As a member of the Nationally Determined Contribution Partnership, UNICEF has supported country processes to integrate child and youth-sensitive ideas and actions where possible. Together with UNESCO, the regional office in Bangkok, UNICEF has conducted research to identify opportunities to increase youth engagement in green economy policies and the promotion of green skills in the Mekong region. In Malaysia, for example, the engagement of UNICEF and UNDP to establish a youth environmental living labs aim to empower sustainable development game changers through localized action of young people. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter. We are all here, despite the ongoing COVID crisis. Since 2019, UNICEF and UNDP have committed to working together through a global partnership to respond to the impacts of climate change and environmental degradation on children and young people. We will continue to build on the partnership to empower and engage young people through increased access to knowledge and awareness on climate change education, opportunities for youth engagement, and investments in young entrepreneurships and financing of climate solutions. But there is still a way to go. UNICEF is committed to supporting climate actions as a partner at national and regional levels. I wish everyone a highly productive 2 days meeting as we work together to bring solutions to the climate crisis in partnership with you all. Together we can transform the future. Thank you very much.
All right. So thank you so much to Karin Hulshoff of UNICEF for sharing that welcome message to our delegates right now. She mentioned a lot of important points. She said that climate crisis is the biggest crisis that our generation is facing. She also mentioned that climate crisis is a threat multiplier to other problems such as poverty, hunger, etc., especially right now that we are under a pandemic. So we have limited mobility. So we are experiencing more problems, plus we have the climate crisis. She also mentioned that we need to reimagine the post-COVID world, to listen to the youth, to all of you, and we need to accelerate climate actions. Maybe one of my most favorite quotes that she mentioned would be having a voice is also having a choice. And I think by having a choice, that means that we need to choose to act, especially in this pandemic. And she also mentioned that today marks a new chapter amid the pandemic, that despite our limitations, we are still doing something about the climate crisis. Okay, so now as we move forward to our next message, we will now proceed to another message coming from our next message will come from the Deputy Executive Secretary. This is a very important message from the UNFCCC. Let's all welcome Ovai Sarmad.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And I'm Ovai Sarmad from Deputy Executive Secretary of Climate Change Secretariat in Bonn. It's a great pleasure for me to join this event today. The virtual regional dialogue on meaningful youth empowerment. And I'm really delighted and happy to see so many youth leaders and climate advocates from Asia and the Pacific region joined in this event today. As we all know, climate change is happening right now, and its impact are being experienced every day by communities and people around the world. In addition, this pandemic has created new challenges and uncertainties for us all. What remains certain is that we must strive to strengthen our climate pledges and work together to further climate action. Unlike the pandemic, or for the pandemic, there cannot be a vaccine for climate change. Young people have an important role to play in climate advocacy, including reminding decision makers of the importance of raising climate action and ambition to accelerate the rapid and radical transition to low carbon and just climate resilient economies and societies. Today, young people are more interested and engaged than ever before in taking various ambitious climate action initiatives around the world. Youth throughout the world are out in the front, and we are thankful for that. In many cases, far ahead of the adults on these issues. You see how the interconnected world is in everything that we do and the existence that we take for granted. You know that addressing climate change can also help us address some of humanity's other biggest challenges relating to health, poverty, equality, biodiversity, and the list goes on. Recognizing the need for enhancing inclusive participation, parties to the climate change processes, in particular Paris Agreement, aim to facilitate the participation of young people in intergovernmental and national climate processes through the Action for Climate Empowerment, the ACE agenda. Our Secretariat, UN Climate Change, has embraced what we call inclusive multilateralism, and it's about having more voices to the table with respect to climate change. This new regional platform supports exactly this idea, as it aims to support governments to engage young people in a meaningful way to implement their national climate plans, something that is referred to as NDCs, nationally determined contributions, by the governments and countries around the world. We also support activities for youth, including in Asia and the Pacific region, through regional collaborative centers in Bangkok in particular, which fosters youth participation at key regional events, providing capacity building through webinars on topics related to Paris Agreement and facilitating collaboration between youth and relevant organizations, including our other organizations in the UN system like UNICEF, the UN regional offices, and other strategic partners on climate-related activities. Young people have an opportunity to actively engage in the upcoming COP26 later this year in Glasgow, as well as the Youth for Climate initiative, Driving Ambition Summit in September, to be hosted by Italy, which will provide an enormous opportunity for discussion between the young delegates and the ministers attending that event pre-COP in Italy. Another important space for youth to engage in climate discussions is in 2021 is the annual conference of youth organized by the YOUNGO. We know that youth want their voices and concerns and ideas to be heard and considered when decisions are made. The regional dialogues today provides this crucial convening space for youth leaders to share their views with government representatives. This dialogue will help more youth voices and perspectives to be included in decision-making process and also open up avenues for collaboration. I congratulate UNDP, UNFCCC's Regional Collaborative Center, as well as the broad range of partners and youth networks involved in organizing the dialogue. Such efforts are at the heart of building and sustaining momentum for climate action. I have no doubt that the event's plenary and roundtable sessions will raise awareness, inspire and support you to take meaningful climate action in your communities in the region. I would also encourage you to take advantage of the Youth Empowerment in Climate Action platform that will be launched tomorrow. The platform will ensure that climate action continues after the dialogue. It aims to empower youth by providing the knowledge, the resources, the networks, and support to take climate action in the region of Asia Pacific. It will offer broad opportunities for youth to engage in learning experiences, awareness campaigns, policy advocacy, and implementing innovation grants. At this point, we need urgent, ambitious, sustained action by all stakeholders for countries to achieve their climate targets and for us all to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. The enthusiasm, determination, and continued efforts of youth to address climate emergency is cause for hope for us all. For this, you have our deep appreciation and our full support. And you can count on our support continuing going forward in this race to address the climate emergency. Together, we will create a fair, just, climate resilient future for all. I really would like to thank you all for your engagement, for your participation, for your passion to address this existential crisis that we are all in. And finally, and not the least, I wish you healthy outcomes, especially emerging from this pandemic, unfortunately, as we are going through it. So keep safe, take good care, and I wish you a lot of success in this event. Thank you.
Right. So thank you so much to Ovai Sarmad. He is the Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC. Let's give him another digital warm round of applause. Thank you so much, sir, for those remarks, especially to our youth who are right here. He mentioned that there cannot be a vaccine for climate change. So what needs to be done is for collective action by everyone. It's also needed to have structural change. And he also mentioned that youth is more engaged right now, more than ever, of course, because we have our technology right now, and we need to use this wisely. To address climate change will also address several problems. He mentioned particularly the health crisis. And he also mentioned that young people have the opportunity to actively engage in the upcoming COP26. So he once again, he also mentioned by the latter part of his message that we are launching a platform by tomorrow, day 2, by the end of the program. And he is advising everyone that we should use this opportunity to further strengthen our climate action. So now, as we proceed with our program, thank you once again to Ovai Sarmad for that message. At this point, we'll hear it from 2 representatives from our convening partners. We will begin with the Director of Education and Society, East Asia and COP26 Global Lead from the British Council. Let's welcome Alison Barrett. Alison, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you all today. As your colleague said, my name's Alison Barrett, and I oversee the British Council's programmes in arts and culture, education and English across the Asia Pacific region in 14 countries. I'm based here in Thailand today, so really happy to be joining you. We're delighted to be co-convening the regional dialogue on youth empowerment and climate action with UNDP, the UNFCCC, with UNICEF and with YONGO. And we'd like to thank the speakers, the contributors and the participants for putting together what looks like a really fantastic, amazing, interactive and compelling programme. I'm sure many of you know the British Council. We're the UK's organisation for cultural relations. What does that mean? That means that we work together with our partners across the world to build understanding, to build friendships, to build relationships and partnerships, to work together to address global shared challenges. And there's no challenge bigger than the climate emergency facing all of us now today. We build those relationships through our core areas of arts, of culture, of education and English. We know that protecting the planet is a global issue, it's a health issue, it's a racial equality issue, it's a development issue, it's a rights issue, it's a displacement issue. It's affecting all of us in so many disciplines and so many areas, but it's also a cultural relations issue. It's also important that we think about creativity, we think about collaboration, we think about imagination, innovation. How can we inspire and create and collaborate to bring about change and the change that we want to see in the world? Because of that, the British Council feels that our work in arts, in culture, in education and in English language teaching is critically important. It's part of the solution. In the wake of the large-scale youth-led global climate emergency movement, and I'm so proud of all of you for being here today, young people's voices have never been more prominent. In the British Council's research, in our fourth survey, we asked 40,000 young people from across 36 countries, 18 to 34-year-olds, what did they think was the most important thing that they wanted support with, that they wanted to be working on? And of course, climate change is perceived to be the most critical issue in all of those countries. The negative impacts of climate change impact the young and the most vulnerable the most. We work in 100 countries globally. We work with 790 million people just last year. We can connect young people with global leaders, with policymakers, with scientists, with artists, with journalists, with musicians. We can create through those really interesting collaborations, new knowledge, new approaches, new ways of thinking about issues and new solutions. We want to work together with you and with our partners to create opportunities for that collaboration to happen and to build it into fruition. So to give you a flavor of some of the work that we're doing across the Asia Pacific region specifically, we recognize the role of young early career researchers in contributing to local solutions, to build on local knowledge and to generate new research and new learning that can benefit local communities. We've partnered with the Association of Commonwealth Universities to create an opportunity for 24 young rising star researchers from across the world who want to specialize in researching particular challenges in small island states. So in this region, that would support work in the Pacifics. We want to create research collaborations between the UK and other universities. So we've created a tripartite research collaboration fund for universities in Japan, in the UK, and in the ASEAN region to come together to look at specific challenges in the ASEAN region and create specific solutions. We've created platforms and skills development opportunities for young scientists through our Fame Lab competition, which currently runs in Thailand, Malaysia, Korea, and Australia. And that competition is a way for young scientists to present their research in an engaging, thoughtful, and exciting way to engage public and to build trust in climate science. We've created a new fund in Malaysia to connect young people in Malaysia with young people in the UK, from the arts, from the creative industries, from education, from science, so that they can create new ways of working to address shared issues that they're both facing in both countries. We're offering capacity building opportunities for teachers and for learners, building language learning resources that focus on sustainability and environment, working with teachers associations from around the region who work with local teachers all across the region. We've launched a series of lectures in Singapore where we're bringing together some of the best researchers and scientists to talk about the work that they are doing in collaboration with scientists in the region. We're offering grants and scholarships to study climate-related courses in the UK or internationally, grants to journalists from this region to build their skills and capacity to research on climate-related issues in their countries. A new scholarship for young women to access STEM courses at UK universities, and a whole new range of grants, social action grants for active citizens, young people who work with us on our Active Citizens program that we run globally and have run globally for many, many years. This is just an example of some of the ways that we're trying to bring together and create opportunities for young people to engage, for young people to build their knowledge and skills, to share their knowledge and skills, and to create opportunities across disciplines. We think we can't leave the climate crisis to scientists alone. It has to be a solution for all of us, for creative artists, for journalists, for educationalists and educators. So really, really excited to be here with you today. Really looking forward to hearing what you think is important and how you think we can work together to create a better future. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Alison Barrett. She is once again the Director of Education and Society of East Asia and the COP26 Global Lead from the British Council. Let's give her a warm round of applause, please. Thank you so much, Alison, for that very important message. I'd like to emphasize some of the points. She mentioned that we need to work together, of course, to address climate change. She also mentioned that protecting the planet is not only a global issue, but it is also a development issue, a rights issue, displacement issue, and cultural issue. She also urged us to think about innovation, and we need to work on our creativity to address climate change. And she also reiterated that we need new solutions, and these are needed to address climate change. So once again, let's thank the British Council for providing all of these platforms that you are implementing in the region to address climate change and many other issues. Thank you so much to Alison Barrett. Okay, so now we proceed to our last welcome address, and certainly not the least. So now, representing the youth, let's call in the global focal point from Yango. Let's welcome Hita Lakani. Hita, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Jules. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you today. It's an honor to be here representing, of course, Yango, but voices of young people from across the world. And like my esteemed colleagues have already mentioned in the speeches before me, that the climate crisis is a challenge for young people. It is a people are getting more and more involved, because it's not just because we're afraid of what's going to happen to our future. Maybe that is one of the points, but it is because we understand as youth, we are part of the solution. We have the power, we have the energy, we have the passion, but we also come with solutions. We also come with our expertise on different aspects. And this is what makes us extremely crucial in solving the bigger issue of climate change. As we talk about a recovery from COVID-19, when we talk about a green recovery, I truly feel that we can only have a green recovery if we have a just recovery and an intergenerational recovery. So we have to ensure that voices of all age groups, whether it's children, youth, the adults, all of this has to be considered together in one platform, together when the conversations are happening, in order to ensure that we have an intergenerational recovery. Because only when these conversations happen, when views and ideas and thoughts of everyone are taken together, will we have, of course, an intergenerational, a just recovery, and automatically such a recovery will be green. There is no way that we will go back to the original system, to the old normal, as we used to call, for any sort of recovery after COVID-19. So we have to work together. And when we talk about, youth action, what can young people do? It was very inspiring also for me to see our Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, Mr. Ove Sarmat, to mention that the COI is one such space, the Conference of Youth. It happens a few days before the COP, and this time we're going to have it in many different formats. We're going to have a virtual COI in the latter part of the year to ensure that young people from across the world, even those who might not be able to make it to Glasgow, can attend, can input their voices into this sort of global document, which will be given to the UNFCCC and the COP26 presidents. So we really look forward to engaging with young people. It has been an absolute pleasure also working with the UNDP team, with all the other partners, with UNICEF, with British Council, of course with the UNFCCC, as we have our continued engagement, to see how we can together mobilize young people, we can engage young people, but make sure that this engagement is meaningful. We're not just getting young people to make it like a pretty platform for, to have some tokenized panels, but we're actually ensuring that youth voices are brought into the system, that young people are heard to what they want to be, what their demands are, and these demands are actually taken into action. So what I would like to say to all of you in the room today, which I see an incredible number, more than 800 people on Zoom, and I'm not sure how many are watching live stream. This is very, very heartening. This is inspiring for me to see so many young people from the Asia Pacific actively looking at this, actively participating. And the only thing I'd like to say is, we as youth, we have to be the change makers, but we also have to be the bridges to our communities. We have to take this, whatever knowledge we get, whatever actions we do, whatever information we get, we have to take this back to our communities back at home. Ensure that we make voices of the most vulnerable communities heard. Reach back to indigenous young people. Reach back to young people from rural areas, from young people from areas who do not have connectivity, who do not have the access to be on Zoom at the moment. We need to bridge this gap, be the bridges, bring the voices of the communities to the space, and ensure that we can do this together. So raise your voice, of course, for hold governments accountable, hold corporations accountable, raise your voice for the climate crisis, but also raise your voice for the most marginalized communities. Youth is not a homogeneous group. Young people come in different forms, people of color, people of island states, people coming from indigenous communities. We have all of this amongst us. So we need to ensure that all of these voices are brought together and we work as the global community, as the global youth, to fighting a challenge which is going to affect all our futures. So that's where I'll leave it for today. And I look forward to an engaging 2 days with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hita Lakani. She is the global focal point from Yango. Thank you so much, Hita, for inspiring all of us and representing the youth sector in the opening remarks. Wow, that's a very inspiring message. She mentioned, as Linka mentioned here on the chat box, be the bridge and bring the voices. That is a very important message from Hita Lakani, especially right now because we have limited mobility and we have, those of you, the 800 plus participants, you have the opportunity and the privilege to be connected on this Zoom. So you have the responsibility to bridge everything that you are learning now down to your communities and also bridge the sentiments of the communities to the discussions like now. So thank you so much, Hita, for that message. She also mentioned that more people are getting more involved, not only because we are scared for the future, but we are here because we understand that we are part of the solution. So thank you so much, Hita Lakani, for that message. And of course, to all our speakers who welcomed our virtual delegates in this regional dialogue. All our speakers wanted to join all of us with us tonight live, but due to time zone challenges, some speakers couldn't make it. In any case, once again, we are grateful to all of you for being part of the opening session of our regional dialogue. Let's give them a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much to all of you. Okay, so friends, as we proceed to our program this afternoon, let's dive deeper in our discussions and zero in on the climate promise. What is this climate promise? To enlighten us about the UNDP's climate promise, okay, the climate promise agenda, let's call in the lead technical specialist from the National Adaptation Plans, Nature, Climate, and Energy team of the UNDP Asia Pacific. Let's welcome Rohini Kohli. Rohini, go ahead.
Thank you, Jules. And once again, it's such a pleasure to be part of this forum and this dialogue and to see more than 830 people here already, and hopefully a lot more participants also between now and tomorrow. So just in brief, I think to begin with our presentation, so also a little bit about me. I work on climate change adaptation at the Nature, Climate and Energy team of UNDP. And today, yes, we're going to speak a little bit about what is this Climate Promise initiative that UNDP has been supporting since 2020. And this is an initiative that has also continuing in 2021. Next slide, please. Yeah, exactly. So I think firstly, just a reminder of the issues, which I think all of us are pretty much familiar with, but it's an important recap for us, is that this region is the most disaster prone region in the world. And also the entire profile of the region, which includes least developed countries, also significant number of small island developing countries, and as well as middle income countries. So a lot of the countries have extensive coastlines. They have pretty low-lying territories, and there is bringing the extremes of drought, flooding, and typhoons to various parts of the region. And a majority of Asia's population, about half, live in low-lying coastal areas. So the issue of climate change is very pressing, and I think now we do know from this global poll that UNDP conducted under Mission 1.5 that the populations in the region also consider this is a significant climate emergency for the Asia Pacific. So I think what this means operationally is that both the reduction of emissions and clean energy are very important priority for the region. But at the same time, climate change adaptation is equally a very important priority to protect lives and to limit, and to make sure we are adapting to keeping, at the designated, it says 2 degrees Celsius, but well below 2 degrees and preferably close to 1.5. So that's to say that both the mitigation issues of emission reductions as well as the issues of adaptation are equally important for the region as a whole. And these are two parts of the entire climate response that is already underway in many countries, but requires a significant acceleration. Next slide, please. So against this backdrop, UNDP's climate promise is actually one very strategic and special initiative, along with many other partners of the UN and also other not just sister agencies, but also a lot of development partners. It's basically our support offer to try and support countries. They're called nationally determined contributions for short, the NDCs. They're not commitments, they are contributions, but they do involve setting targets, identifying priorities, and they're a pretty high level kind of a statement from the government about how they would like to proceed for the next 5 to 10 years. And all countries that are in the process of enhancement of these NDCs, which are these national pledges, which have requested support from partners such as UNDP and others. We are providing them technical assistance in this enhancement process. It's a very large offer of support, and it is over 115 countries are availing of this support through UNDP. And we'll say a little bit more about how the youth engagement comes into this in the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think we basically have 3 pillars here in this slide. We have a box saying ambition, we have a box saying acceleration, and then we have a box saying mobilization. And these 3 things, supporting the enhancement process of the climate plans, supporting the ambition, sort of setting the target setting, this is sort of like the first box, and this is where we put our climate promise support work in this. In the second box is acceleration work. And the acceleration actually does mean, but there are also support to actual climate actions on the ground, climate initiatives, programs. A lot of these require designing, in a very scientific way and attracting more investments. So the acceleration is really about doing the work on the ground. And for UNDP, this is, through supporting, clean energy. There are a lot of populations which are energy deprived, in the world, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Middle East and in South Asia. So it is to look at having reliable and affordable access to clean energy. There's also significant work on nature-based solutions, both in terms of the restoration of lands, making sure things like mangroves are being supported, because these are very good sort of ecosystem-based services that can really have both development benefits and co-benefits. And then there's a lot of work on adaptation and resilience, which is part of the acceleration pillar. And the last part of this strategy is mobilization, because without the engagement of people on the ground, local governments, local communities, also vulnerable populations, and also many other groups, which are very important for decision making. So it's basically government, but also non-state groups, and a lot of youth groups come in this. We also supporting mobilization. So the ambition, acceleration, mobilization is basically the three parts to our strategy. And the climate promise that I spoke of in the earlier slide is very much to do with the first box, which is this ambition setting. And this year is very important for that ambition setting. Up to the UK COP, we are hoping that countries around the world really have much more ambitious targets this time around, because the whole premise of the Paris Agreement is to, in successive cycles, keep ratcheting up the ambition, because we are not at the level of ambition as globally that we should be, in order to really keep temperature rise. Well, slide please. So I'm actually going to hand over to my colleague Krib here to actually take us through, what are some of the important pieces of the climate promise and how they are, rolling out in the Asia Pacific, and a few kind of snapshots of some examples in the region to provide a flavor of how this is running. So with that, let me hand over to my colleague Krib Setathani to take us just to the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Rohini. Welcome, participant, again, and good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. So anyway, I'll talk a little bit about what we do with the, specifically under the Climate Promise. So the Climate Promise works in mainly 5 areas. First one, basically to really touch on trying to reduce our carbon emission or support governments in doing that, and also really looking at how to really build the political will and societal ownership of these processes. A little bit more into trying to look at different aspects of trying to increase ambition or to review different things, trying to revise, and maybe add a little bit of more consideration to new, what the climate terminology call is sectors, basically trying to work on more climate ambitions in different areas, such as transport, energy, agriculture, land use. And also, the fourth one is looking at how we're going to finance it, how we're really looking to not just develop the plan, but also to really consider how to finance these initiatives through government initiative, through government partnership with private sector or other engagement. And last but not least is how to really monitor progress, how to really figure out exactly if we're doing the right thing, we're putting in, is it effective, how far along things are moving. So in a way, what I also really want to dive into is what we also work on, different sectors, specifically energy, and also adapting to climate change. And as you can see, a lot of initiatives are now with different countries, about 5 of them are dealing with health. And since this is a youth dialogue, essentially, we are working with governments on specifically addressing youth in 8 different countries. And last but not least, we're also working on gender issues within Asia Pacific, 6 of them to be specific. And moving on to the next, excuse me. And fortunately, until the last 31st of December, 11 countries within Asia Pacific countries have submitted these so-called national NDCs, or the national pledges, to the UNFCCC. And 8 of them work with UNDP and our partners to enhance their NDCs. And namely Bangladesh, Cambodia, Maldives, Mongolia, Nepal, Thailand, Tonga, and Vietnam. And so I want to give you a little bit of a glimpse into what we do we work with our partners and the government in terms of supporting youth. Specifically, for example, in Papua New Guinea, we've hosted a roundtable and survey and to seek inputs from youth to provide recommendations into the NDC policy discussion, which yielded really strong recommendation to the policy decision makers to really try to further enhance, youth engagement and how youth can become part of the implementation of climate action. And another country we want to highlight is Vietnam, who initiated basically Youth for Climate Action activities. These are camps, workshops, challenges that are still ongoing in terms of interacting with youth to gather more engagement and empowerment to really address both the different solutions to provide and actually implement them. And looking a bit ahead, so in this year, we're looking forward to the remaining countries that we work with: Afghanistan, Bhutan, Cook Islands, Indonesia, Iran, Kiribati, Laos, PDR, Malaysia, Myanmar, Nauru, Niue, Pakistan, Palau, Philippines, Samoa, Sri Lanka, and Vanuatu, who will submit their NDC this coming year, hopefully with more ambition. And thank you. Over to you, Jules.
All right. Thank you so much, Kun Krib, for that presentation. And of course, to Rohini Kohli of the National Adaptation Plans, Nature, Climate, and Energy team of the UNDP Asia Pacific. So thank you so much. I hope you guys learned so much about the Climate Promise. Basically, if you are asked, what is the Climate Promise all about by the UNDP, you need to think of the three things. They mentioned: ambition, acceleration, and mobilization. Basically, an ambition to strengthen climate pledges towards the SDGs or the Sustainable Development Goals. Let me ask all of you, what number is it on the SDGs when we're talking about climate action? Comment now. What number is it? SDG number? Perfect. Okay. You know your SDGs. That's good. Okay, I get it now. 13. Yes. Okay. Next. Acceleration. Acceleration is about scaling up climate action to deliver impact on the ground. As Hita mentioned a while ago, we will be the bridges to our communities. So the Climate Promise is basically doing that by bridging the impact of the climate action down to the ground. And of course, mobilization. We need to engage all sectors to collectively take ambitious climate action. We understand that this event is for the youth sector, but of course, we have invited several sectors like the government, private sector, civil society, because we understand that it is an intersectoral issue when we're talking about climate change. Okay, so ambition, acceleration, mobilization, that basically those 3 points would encompass and describe what the UNDP Climate Promise is. Okay, so now let's proceed. Now that we are more aware about this initiative, let's listen to some narratives from individuals who are here to inspire us even further. First, to give a keynote speech is a young change maker who has a compelling story in his journey in empowering communities to address climate change. Let us welcome from the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Board on Climate Change. Please welcome Ernest Gibson. Ernest, go ahead.
Nisam Bulavanaka, Noya Maori, everybody from Suva, Fiji. It's an early evening over here, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to join you all. It's not every day that you get to address an enormously large cohort of young and driven individuals. So it's super cool to be here. There are a few things that I'd like to share with you today, but the first one I want to start with is about 6 or 7 years ago, when I was 17 years old, I did a piece of writing. And this piece of writing is something that I often go back to look at because it's something that I find is what I use as a means of grounding me as an individual and me as somebody within the climate movement. One thing that you'll notice as a youth activist or as somebody working in the development space is that it's very easy to get caught up in the noise, and finding a way to ensure that we can understand where we're coming from, but more importantly, where our intention is to go is extremely important. So I want to share this with you. In the Pacific, we're taught to recognize the value of narratives and stories from the day that we're born. You need to know who you are. Your mother would tell you the voyage of your people, every lick of the ocean, every patch on your sail, each person whose life gave way to yours. You have a feud with somebody in your village. Your grandfather will tell you the story of the way that your families are connected and how the bond that you share is one that transcends minor squabbles. He will tell you the story of how in our cultures, relationships are integral to our survival. The climate crisis is no different. It's a story, an ongoing story, but one that we have the unique opportunity to write the next chapters of. For generations, our peoples have engaged with issues by understanding things as parts of stories. And that's one of my core messages to all of you today. Recognizing that the climate crisis is an ongoing story with so many different parts. And our job as individuals, as communities, as members of youth networks and youth movements is to find the piece of that story that we can influence and change. There are three things that I'd like to talk about today, and the first one is to do with youth engagement. Understanding what it's like to engage youth so that as the 2,000 or however many of you listening today go on to engage in your spaces, I want you to think of ways in which you can engage with other youth in a way that's meaningful, in a way that does justice to the expertise and the individuality that they bring to the table. But also, I think it's equally as important when we are continuing to be engaged in spaces as young people. I say young people, but I feel like I'm very quickly moving out of the age bracket of a young person, but here for it anyway. It's also really important to recognize the red flags that there are when we are being engaged by organizations and institutions. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is around ways in which we as young people and as networks of young people through the climate crisis and through the climate movement have the opportunity to realize our own potential, but really importantly, realize and help to realize the potential of others in our networks and spaces. And lastly, and I cannot stress this one enough, and it's something that Hita mentioned and speakers before me have mentioned, the unbelievable importance of working together. Because the climate crisis is not something that affects one group of people or one person in an individual place in some isolated example. The climate crisis is something that affects every single one of us at varied levels, but it affects every single one of us. And we need to find ways of ensuring that we're working together as a means of combating this crisis. So those are the three things. And then I'll sum it up with a call to action to all of us and to the government representatives online. So the first thing around youth engagement. The first thing around youth engagement that I really would like to stress is that youth engagement needs to be circular. There needs to be a way or a mechanism that's in place to ensure that when we engage youth populations, we find a way of ensuring that we go back to these same individuals who took time and effort and energy to give us information, that we go back to them and we hold ourselves to account. So it's one thing to hold a consultation or a dialogue with youth groups from across the world. It's an entirely different thing to go back and report against our own actions and our own intentions. And that's something that's really important. So that's something to look at if, as individuals, we're engaging youth populations and think about and how we can assess our own actions. But it's also something to continue to question decision makers, to continue to question conveners, people who encourage youth participation. That's something that we need to continually question and persistently do. How are you going to report back to us? Because if you take our time and you take our energy and you take our efforts and you take our ideas, there needs to be a mechanism that ensures that you come back to us and you tell us what you did with that information and our efforts. But also, youth engagement needs to be something that's continuous. It can't be something that's done on an ad hoc, one-off basis. If you want to engage youth populations, it needs to be done so in a way that is consistently done. Because otherwise you're doing it for the events. And I think Hita mentioned something really important about if you want to engage youth populations, don't do it for the photo opportunity. Don't do it for the fancy handshaking ceremony. Don't invite the youth that you like or the youth that you know have large social media followings and ensure that they're at the event so that you can be gaining from that experience. Engage youth because it's a necessity. Engage youth because without that engagement, the process is incomplete. Engage youth because without that, any information that you take will not be fully informed. Engage youth because it's the right thing to do. Engage youth because it's the only way that we can ensure that when we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic, when we come out of the climate crisis, when we get through the systems of violence that exist within our societies, we do so properly. We do so holistically. So some of the red flags that I've, as a young person, that I've noticed about when people are being engaged is if ever you get called at the very last minute to join some kind of youth consultation or to speak on some panel, in my mind, that's if not a red flag, that's an orange flag. That's a flag that they're telling you that you were kind of engaged towards the end of a process. One way that I've found really important or really helpful, a really useful tip that somebody gave me is if you feel like you're being engaged because it's a tokenistic thing, say no. Because remember, they're reaching out to you because they need you. They're not reaching out to you because they have everything that they need. The only reason that they're calling you is because you are a piece of the puzzle that's missing. And allow yourself to understand the value that you have. And that's something that I feel like I really wish I'd learned a lot earlier, but it's something that I learned from my 19-year-old sister the other day. Another really important thing to do, another really important red flag to look out for when youth engagement takes place is if you enter a process and it's the end of the process, that's, in general, that's in my opinion, that's a red flag because it means that youth haven't been consulted consistently across the board. It means that you've been brought on to tick a box at the end. And one thing that we never, ever have to be is a box ticker. That's not what we are. We are equal players on this earth. We have the opportunity to create an enormous amount of change, and there's no time to be box ticking. So that's the first thing. The second thing is around realizing potential. And this is a piece of advice that my mother gave me, and I'm never going to forget this piece of advice because I feel like it's not something that everybody knows. And it's really around understanding what we need to do to ensure that we prioritize things correctly. So if you are an ER doctor, this is something that you know how to do. Unfortunately, I'm not an ER doctor, so this is not something that I necessarily tended towards. But it's called triage. It's recognizing what are the things that are the most important for us to do now, what are things, and ensuring that we put them in that correct order, because we can't prioritize everything as a priority, because not everything is. If you prioritize everything, it means nothing is a priority. So it's looking at things in three categories. The first one is something that's red. Something that's red is something that is life-threatening immediately. And then the second one is something that's orange. And that's something that's life-threatening, but not necessarily time-sensitive. And then the last one is green, something that's not life-threatening. And so we need to find a way of ensuring that we can label what are the things that are red, what are the things that are orange, and what are the things that are green. This then provides us with the opportunity to be able to invest our energy and our time, because that's something that we only have a limited amount of. Invest our energies and our time into those three things in that order. And understanding that sometimes things change, things go from orange to red, but as long as we have that level of plan and that level of triaging, we are in a position where we can realize our potential fully. Because if you're spreading yourself so unbelievably thin, it means that you're never going to be able to do anything properly. And this leads me to the second part of this idea of realizing potential, and it's really important. When I was about 16 years old, my dad said to me, Ernest, I want you to know that you can do anything. You can be anything that you want, but you can't do everything. And there's a really important distinction between anything and everything. Because anything is just a whole list of things that you can make a choice from. But if you're trying to do everything, you're not allowing yourself enough time to heal and grow and learn. And only once you've done these things are you then able to give 100% of yourself. And so you can never realize your full potential until you have the opportunity to take a step back, to understand what are some of the things that you can and cannot do, and really invest your time into the things that you have the ability and the capacity and the time to invest into. I know that this isn't necessarily something to do with the climate movement, but it's really important to remember the way in which we engage in a space. Because once we do that, then we have the ability to be able to influence climate policy. We have the ability to then say to decision makers, actually, I think what you're talking about is a whole load of, and there's going to be like a bleep sound over here, and it's the thing that comes out the back end of something. And I think that that's really important, because once we get ourselves in a position where we're comfortable and happy and set, then we have the opportunity to be able to really talk truth to power. And the third one, as I mentioned, is really important, is around working together. And this links very nicely to the first one of realizing potential. There are things that I know that I'm pretty good at doing. And one thing that I'm good at doing is being able to communicate things in a way that makes sense and is simple. And I think it's because I think my mind is a very simple mind. I understand things in a very linear fashion, and I find that that makes it easy for me to communicate. Something that I'm not particularly great at doing is on the ground work. So in the middle of a crisis, being the person that looks at a team and says, this is what needs to happen. I'm going to delegate tasks. I'm going to be able to ensure that we have people building houses, we have people setting up safe spaces for women and children. That's not necessarily something that I'm good at. But I recognize that there are other people out there that are fantastic. But I recognize that there are other people that are fantastic at these things. And so that's why we work together, because we all hold a different piece to the puzzle. And once we bring those pieces together, we have a fantastic thing that's completely cohesive, works like a well-oiled machine, and is absolutely fantastic. But until and unless you and I find ways of ensuring that we can assess ourselves and the things that we bring to the table, we will find it extremely difficult to then be able to put each other's pieces together and work in a cohesive manner. So I really do need to echo the points made by Hita and others before me around the importance of ensuring that we're working together. This is a fight that we all have the same enemy. And we need to ensure that we're continuing to fight that same enemy together as a united front. And those three things, I think, are three things that I really would love to share with you. Ensuring that your youth engagement is something on both ends that is circular, that is continuous, and that is consistent, but also looking at how we can realize our potential, and in doing so, allow others to do the same. And create spaces for that to take place. And then lastly is around ensuring that we work together continuously. Because if we aren't working together, then we will struggle to be able to beat the systems that ensure that this climate crisis is something that is still a problem in 2021. Finally, the last thing that I would like to share is a call to action. So this call it's not going to be long. Time is of the essence, and I know that COVID has provided us with some beautiful stories of these clearer waters and cleaner skies, but we have not made substantive changes to our ways of life. When COVID passes, and we must remember and we must hope that it will we go back to our diesel-fueled cars, our capitalist-driven economies, and our unhealthy consumerism habits? If so, then all the stories of dolphins resurfacing and smog lifting will be legends of a time when the world stood still. And the stories that we then tell our children will be stories of how we could have done better. But that is not the story that I plan to tell. Our story will be of how we made the decision that our way of life was unsustainable and unethical. How we learned to find the balance of creation, recognizing that we are but a mere part of something much greater than any of us. How we learned that we are stronger together, that our journeys are so intrinsically linked that a blunder to one of our parts is a blunder to us as a whole. How we recognize that carrying a keep cup and riding a bike to work and beach cleanups were fantastic, but that what we really needed was coordinated system change. Change that looks like investments into clean energy systems, into education systems that teach children about the value and fragility of life, and not that profit equals priority. This change looks like voting leaders out of office who do not share our vision. That is the story that I will tell. My call to governments and leaders and elected officials is this. Listen to us like we have the financial buy-in of a Fortune 500 company. Be open to our suggestions and insights in the same way that you are open to the checks labeled donor priorities. And be willing to take a chance on us the same way that you were willing to take a chance on trickle-down economics. My call to all of us is never give up, never stop shouting, never stop believing that this story of hope and success will be the story that we tell our children, and more importantly, that our children will tell their children with beaming pride. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Ernest Gibson. Ernest, let's give him a warm round of applause. Wow, wonderful words of wisdom, Ernest. Thank you so much for inspiring hundreds of our youth who are present here on Zoom and who are watching via YouTube. Very quickly, let me go back to some important points that Ernest shared with us, that climate change is like a story and it depends with us on how we're going to write the next chapters. That's a very creative way of saying things on how we can act on climate change. He also emphasized 3 points on youth engagement and that we should also realize the potential of other youth members in our sector, and of course to work together, especially during this climate crisis. We just need to go back to SDG 17, right? To collaborate, to partner with everyone for the global goals. And he also mentioned that we need to engage youth, not only because it's very important to have representation in any event or initiative, but because it is necessary, because it is the right thing to do. And that we should also realize, all of you, that you are a piece of a puzzle that is missing. So you need to be there because it is a necessity, okay? And lastly, he mentioned a very good point that, especially, I think this is very relevant to all of you. I can see all of you going crazy on the chat box right now, that we can do anything, but you can't do everything. It's like a sense of maturity, especially in the volunteer sector, that we need to have a focus so we can give our 100% in volunteering. Once again, thank you so much to Ernest Gibson. He is part of the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Board on Climate Change. Thank you so much, Ernest, for representing the youth sector in that board. Moving forward, after hearing from the side of the youth sector, we'll now hear it from the side of the government. In this particular segment, we have invited a government leader who will focus on why youth empowerment is important for the national climate agenda. Please welcome the head of Vietnam Climate Negotiation, the Deputy Director General of the Department of Climate Change, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Vietnam. Please welcome Mr. Pham Van Tan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. And then great to be here to see so many, all of you that very active for climate actions. So I would like to share with you some information from our experience in Vietnam. So yes, let me share my screen with you. So yeah, that's a moment. Hope that you see my screen. Yes.
Yes, we can see the presentation.
Okay, so great. I would like to share with you 3 points that what is the national action of Vietnam to respond to climate change. We have how to involve participation of youth in a national climate agenda, as well as I would like to recommend some how to empower the youth in the climate national climate action. As you may know, that Vietnam is one of the countries that most impacted by climate change. The most of the problem will be sea level rise, saltwater intrusion, and extreme weather event. Mekong Delta of Vietnam is one of the most vulnerable to sea level rising. Agriculture, natural ecosystem, biodiversity, water resources, public health, and infrastructure are all at risk sector. The most vulnerable group of in Vietnam are the poor, the ethnic minority, the elderly, women, children, and people with disabilities. That's why the government of Vietnam put addressing climate change is a vital problem. For addressing the climate change in Vietnam, we have the set of legal system with so many laws related to climate change, like a biodiversity law, energy efficiency, water resources, natural disaster prevention, etc. We also have the policies on climate change, like a social policy, national strategies, and action, national action plan, etc. So climate change response in Vietnam, we put in harmonization with sustainable development, and between climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation, we go hand in hand for addressing the climate change issue. For Vietnam, we joined UNFCCC since 1994, and for the Paris Agreement, we submit our first intended national contribution in September 2015. We joined the Paris Agreement in December 2015, and we signed together with other countries in the world. We signed the Paris Agreement and then also ratified the Paris Agreement in 2016, but not like many other countries. Together with ratifying the Paris Agreement, we also have a plan for implementations of the Paris Agreement with focus on implementing what we call intended nationally determined contribution. In this, we mainstream the contribution to on the commitment of Vietnam to national, local, and sectoral plan and activities. We have one resolution for Mekong Delta. We also among one of the first developing countries in the world that we institutionalized NDC target. Last November, the government of Vietnam, the National Assemblies of Vietnam already adopt the revised law on environmental protection with one chapter for climate change. And we also adopt the National Adaptation Plan. That means with the law of, on the environment, we put the response to climate change become the legal requirement for all people in Vietnam. Currently, we also already submitted our revised NDC and prepare for the program to implement the NDC of Vietnam. So with that action, actually, Vietnam, we cannot, the work on climate change is not only the work of the government, it's the work of everyone. So this is very important for that action, for climate change action in Vietnam, because in our population, more than 50% are people under 35 years old. We have so many campaigns for this, joining together with the government, with everyone to respond to climate change. I named some of them, like Rain Sunday, Fighting Plastic Pollution, Youth Creative, Youth Volunteer, and Youth Startup in Vietnam. Youth also the main forces in rescuing and evacuating population from the path of cyclone, landslide area, and building resilient to climate impact, because Vietnam is the one country that we face with natural disaster very frequently. So those are the main force to help us to put the resilience and also to help us to respond to the natural disaster. However, we still have some overcome some barrier that need to overcome for maximize the involvement of youth in national climate agenda. With the youth participation, we identify that some of the barriers that limit the youth participation. The first, youth normally is a lack of capacity and knowledge to develop the appropriate investment project. Because in Vietnam, the climate change action or climate change education on climate change is not formally as the system integrate in the system of education in Vietnam. So most of the young graduate from university, primary school, they lack of knowledge and capacity to when they work for climate action. The second thing is a lack of support from local authority because the approach of those to local authorities, sometimes they do come up with different priority, not the same with the priority of local authority. So two sides cannot meet together. That's why they do not get support from local authority. And as a result, financing for youth initiative is more difficult, including the impossible to access to investment loan due to youth have no property to motel. So in Vietnam, with the lead of UNDP, in the past few months, we have initiative one action we call Youth for Climate. We try to identify the bottleneck for involvement of youth in climate action toward the COP26 of the UNFCCC this year. And then the report is being reviewed by youth in Vietnam. And then we wish that the full report will be available very soon. What I recommend for youth participation in the National Climate Action Agenda. The first, we would like to have a strengthened education system with greater focus on climate change to provide youth with better knowledge and the right long-term action in response to climate change. The second, we would like to have more channels and enable youth to access financial resources and technical assistance to support youth-focused projects that build resilient adaptive capacity and GHG reduction of community. And the most important, we would like to set up a platform for regular dialogue among youth and the government and international community to identify the right priority and focus on with the right action for climate action from the youth. And lastly, I would like to share with you the action that we work together with youth in Vietnam in one project. And then thank you very much for the attention. Back to you.
Thank you so much to Mr. Pham Van Tan for your keynote message. Once again, he is the head of the Vietnam Climate Negotiation and the Deputy Director General of the Department of Climate Change Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Vietnam. Thank you so much, Mr. Pham Van Tan. He emphasized that youth participation in the National Climate Agenda is very important. And he also mentioned that youth is the main force in their context in rescuing and evacuating populations from the impacts of climate change. And I think one of the most important points that he mentioned, that we need to overcome barriers for maximizing involvement of youth in the National Climate Agenda. So here's a question to all of you who are watching right now. What are the barriers for youth participation in the climate agenda in your country? Share with us now here on the chat box, so we may know somehow the context of youth participation in your country. Once again, thank you so much to Mr. Pham Van Tan from Vietnam. Okay, so as you answer that quick question here on the chat box, we have a quick announcement. Let me show you that slide. So as a link posted in our Facebook group yesterday, here's an announcement. You can join as one of the organizers of the Unconference of Youth Leaders. So that's a very interesting portion or segment for day 2. In this unconference, we hope to bring the element of participant-led and participant-driven. So unconference format allows participants to generate topics and be a contributor of the content. Participants of the regional dialogue are welcome to submit details of the breakout event in the unconference. So you can see now on your screens the link where you can join, and the link will also be posted. There you go. Link I just posted on the chat box. So go ahead and join if you want to be part of the Unconference of Youth Leaders, which will happen tomorrow during our parallel event. At this point, of course, we need this. We will have a 5-minute break. So we will be back after 5 minutes. So please don't sign out. See you all after 5 minutes. Thank you.
Himalayan Innovation is a social enterprise that designs, implements, and pilots technological solutions to rural population in Nepal.
Our long-term vision is to establish ourselves as a design and implementation agency that has specific expertise in designing products for rural Nepal. We don't straight away talk to the people themselves. We talk to the government bodies first, and then we work with them to identify the most vulnerable people in the community that we want to first impact through our products. This process we completed yesterday by installing our solar units in 2 businesses that are currently being run by women of the community. This is the storage area for the new packets. It's completely dark, no lights at all. In order to use this, we'll put another light here. So, green light says it's fully charged. The red light says it's still getting sun from the light from the sun. Even though it's cloudy, it's still getting some light because we use very high efficient solar panels.
Women comprises majority of our customers in rural Nepal. We focus on making their lives easier, introducing various renewable energy technologies to ease them carry out their daily activities. Himalayan Innovations conducts trainings in order to aware and train rural women on gender-inclusive energy uses.
That allows us to select a couple of women electricians for our long-term intervention, and also helps the other 20-odd women to learn about different simple electrical skills.
Working in rural Nepal comes with many challenges. You have to work with harsh geographic environment, low quality infrastructure, and unpredictable weather.
The motivation to work here in rural Nepal is the people themselves. Their belief in the simplicity of their lives, their respect for nature, and their trust in the human potential of doing good for themselves, for the community, and for the environment they live in.
The name Phoenix was inspired by the phoenix bird, which dies and gets reborn into a new bird. So that's the concept behind Phoenix, right? What we do is we collect old clothes and we turn them into something new. I'm Pamela Mejia. I'm from Manila, Philippines, and I'm the founder of Phoenix Textile Recycling. What we do is we collect textile waste such as old clothes and fabric scraps, and we transform them into higher valued products such as footwear and bags. I was already at my final year in university. One day I was cleaning my closet and I realized in the Philippines we don't have a venue to properly dispose our textile waste, like our old clothes and fabric scraps. So I thought, why don't I turn my dresses into footwear? So that's where Phoenix actually started.
VSA Arts Philippines, it has its own way of creating the inner self and the artistic expression of every person with disability.
What inspired me to partner with VSA is that I was trying to explore more ways of upcycling textile waste. When I finally met them, the fact that the weavers are persons with disability is the one thing that really made me stay and made sure that, okay, this is the place that I want to partner with. Being an entrepreneur is no joke. It's very, very difficult. To be honest, your first few years will be very challenging. So what really made me stay was always trying to go back to what's my why. What do I really want to achieve? Who do I really want to help? What's the impact that I really want to do? Ever since participating and winning Youth Collab, let's say my world and the world of Phoenix has gotten bigger. One is I really got connected with other entrepreneurs from other parts of the world who actually gave me more ideas on how to improve Phoenix. Second is because I won this actually gave me more credibility to apply for business incubators. My advice to aspiring and current young entrepreneurs is you really have to know your why and you have to be sure of it. My vision for Phoenix is to be the premier textile recycling facility, not just in the Philippines, but the rest of the ASEAN region. And I do hope that we get to upcycle and recycle as much textile waste as we can. And of course, to produce beautiful products that people would actually choose over regular products.
Okay, and we are back. I hope you all had a good break, everyone. And to those who are interested to reach out to one of the videos presented by Phoenix, Pamela Mejia is here on Zoom right now, and she'll be speaking later on in one of our segments. And she asked a very good question to know your why. What is your why? If you would like to share it, just comment now on the chat box. What is your why as part of the youth sector, and why are you mobilizing groups, especially in line with climate action? So as we proceed, this regional dialogue on youth empowerment once again is brought to you by our co-convening partners. We'd like to thank them as we, before we proceed to the next part. Once again, that's UNDP Asia Pacific, UNICEF East Asia and Pacific, and UNICEF South Asia. We also have UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center Bangkok, British Council, Young Go, Movers Program, and the 2030 Youth Force. So right now, as we proceed to our panel discussion that will focus on the theme Leaving No Youth Behind on climate action. This panel discussion will be moderated by the Youth Social Entrepreneurship and Innovation Consultant of UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub. Please welcome Kelin, or as we call her, Linka. Linka, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Joe. Oh, sorry. All right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Very nice to meet you. So I'm calling from UNDP Asia Pacific. I'm also one of the organizers of this regional dialogue. I've interacted with some of you through Facebook group, through email, through WeChat group. So nice to see you here in one room together. So yeah, very nice to see you. So I know that so many of you have come in not just on behalf of yourself, you actually come in on behalf of your organizations, your campaigns, your activist activities. There's so many people in your community, so many people that you hope to bring the message back. So today in this session with Leave No Youth Behind, what we are trying to do is that even though the conversation will take place between me as the moderators with three of my fellow panelists, you are also part of this conversation. We hope to invite you to reflect a little bit. Are you include all the group that you can? Can you put make extra effort to include those who are in the marginalized communities to be part of your climate actions. So with that, I would like to invite my panelists to the stage. So let's welcome, so let's give them a round of virtual claps when you are hearing their name and welcome them to the stage. So first of all, we have Tuti Chilton, the Executive Director from Palau Energy Administration. Let's welcome. Okay, let me make the sound on behalf of everyone. All right, so moving on, let's welcome Ms. Saktiksa Arya, co-founder of Himalaya Innovation Nepal. Yes, she's also the speaker that you just saw in the video just now. And last but not least, let's welcome Tu Nguyen, Diversity and Inclusion Supervisor from Cytex Vietnam. Let's welcome. All right, so before we start, let me very quickly just send a message to Wang that we would like to also have you open your video so that we can spotlight you in the webinar. All right. So, well, all right, yes, we have you on the screen, perfect. So before we proceed with questions and also getting to know about their stories, I would like to invite all of them to give a very quick self-introduction, just to tell us who you are and what organization you're working for, very, very briefly. So let's start from Mr. Tuti. So over to you.
Thank you, Linka. My name is Tuti Chilton. I am the Executive Director for the Palau Energy Administration. And our role here in Palau is to regulate the energy sector, as well as work with the renewable energy technologies. So I'm glad to be here, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tuti. Yes, youth energy. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to Ms. Saktiksa. So yes. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Hello. We can't hear you. So if you don't mind, let's invite Tu to introduce himself first. So over to you, Tu.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tu. I'm working as the Diversity and Inclusion Supervisor at Cytex Vietnam, a denim manufacturer based in Quang Ngai, southern province in Vietnam. My responsibility here is to develop and implement a D&I strategy with the ultimate aim of having at least 20% of the employees coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, such as people with disabilities, people coming from the LGBTQ community, trafficking victims, or people who from ethnic minorities by 2025. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Tu. It's also our pleasure to have you here. So let's try again. Let's hear from Saktiksa.
Hello, everyone. My pardon for the previous technical disturbance. I am so glad to be joining this dialogue forum and absolutely thankful for the UNDP and the organizers for having me here. I am Saktiksa Arya, co-founder of Himalayan Innovations. We work for providing affordable clean energy solutions to rural Nepal.
Great. Thank you so much. And once again, welcome all the panelists. So allow me to remind all of us here, our intention and our purpose of this panel is that we hope to have everyone's attention and raise the awareness of when we are doing climate change, where we're doing our climate actions, we have to make sure that all groups of people, regardless of geographical boundaries, ethnic backgrounds, or physical capabilities, or gender identities, they are all included and empowered to take climate actions with us. So with that, let me start with my first question to Mr. Tuti Chilton. So can you share with us a bit about how do you start to pay attention and to care about climate change? Any moment or anyone that influenced you to take on this journey?
Thank you, Linka, and thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. I think the most important thing I would like to share in terms of climate change action and how do we begin from a government point of view. Like Ernest said earlier in the previous presentation, we have to engage not just our youth, but our whole community. So from the regulatory point of view, from the energy sector, the most important part is education. And I don't mean education in the sense of just the school, but education in reaching out to all the communities that are within the environment that we live in. So Palau is a small island state. We have many different islands. We live right at the sea level. So the most important community that we need to work with are those that are living right at the shorelines, reminding them of the issues of climate change. And in order to do that, just like any other topic or idea, we need to engage the young people. I think young people in general throughout the world will help push some of these changes. So I'll use a really good example of tobacco use in Palau. The tobacco group that wanted to stop the use in Palau did not go directly to adults and say, stop using tobacco. They actually engaged them in schools and show them the negative effects of nicotine and the use of tobacco. Because in Palau, we chew betel nut and we also put sticks of tobacco inside. We also smoke cigarettes. And so it was a really successful program to mitigate the use of tobacco with youth because they went straight to the source. And now, almost a generation later, this began in early 1990s, we see the tobacco use is almost cut in half or more in the population. So in the context of climate change and action, education as a well-rounded connection. Just like Ernest said, you engage the youth, but you don't just engage them one time, but you have to be there with them every day and get their ideas in how do we develop these issues and how do we address them. So in the context of no one left behind, I think we have to prepare our young men and women to always be prepared. Unfortunately, the youth today may not necessarily, they're inheriting the problems that we're causing, and we're asking them to also solve them at the same time. So we need to find a way in our own individual communities, whether government sector, private sector, entrepreneurs, to prepare our young men and women to make sure that they can come up with solutions in the future. We may not have them today in 2021, but we'll definitely have them with our youth if we put our faith and abilities and the tools and skills to the young men and women to be able to solve those solutions. So that's just a small point of view from Palau's experience. And I'll turn it back to you, Linka. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tuti. If I may just very quickly summarize some of the takeaways that you shared in Palau. There are some good successful experience of how education can actually change people's behavior. Using tobacco as an example, learning about the bad impact and effect, and letting people really realize and understand why they shouldn't take it or change their behavior. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing the example from Palau. I can see that a lot of love. Shout out to you in the chat box. Yeah, if you're interested, if you don't know where is it, or if you know about Palau, feel free to leave your comment in the chat. So now let's move on to the second question to Satiksa. So can you tell us a little bit more about the stories when you started, when do you started the Himalaya Innovation Nepal, and any stories behind it? What inspired you to take on this journey?
We started Himalayan Innovations in 2015 when we had a big earthquake in Nepal. And before that, myself grew up in the grew up experiencing long 18 to 17 hours of load shedding in Nepal. And the earthquake we had compounded that problem. And so as a youth, we wanted to serve the community and ourselves, coming up with affordable energy solutions and knowing that it is not just needed by me, myself, and my family, but also the many rural families as well. And we started with the pay forward, pay go model at first, and we were able to provide our renewable energy solutions, partnering with cooperatives in rural cooperatives in Nepal, and ultimately we are now advocating for productive uses of clean energy through our Goals for Rurals, where we work with 160 young girls who also work as energy leader, and also to build the cleaner and greener rural communities.
Right. Thank you so much, Sadiqa. So the story behind Himalaya Innovation Nepal is really because you understand the challenge, you live there, and you also understand it's needed for people in your community. So it's not about solving the problem for yourself only, but also to benefit people in the same community, in the same village. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's move to so can you tell us a little bit about how do you start to working on, people with disabilities inclusion in different projects, and also and throughout this whole journey, how does it lead you to Cytex?
So in order to answer your question, I might need to tell you a bit of the story of my life. So because of my significant visual impairment, it was difficult for me to find a university after I graduated from high school. It was not impossible, but the school that accepted me only allowed me to select some of their courses, while I wanted to do something completely different to study English. So after a few months back and forth asking around, I ended up being admitted to RMIT, a Australian-based university having campuses in Vietnam, and they were very keen on, how could I say it, trying with my situation. So they accepted me, worked with me for the first 2 years, which included my teacher and a lot of administrative staff in the process. And after 2 years, things get very stable. They have a dedicated department that support not just me, but all the students with disability in the school. But then when I finished my study and started looking for a job, the whole situation come back. I wanted to look for a job that could take full advantage of what I have studied so far, but couldn't. And I thought to myself, if I, who was fortunate enough to be ended up in one of the top universities in Vietnam and still somehow managed to remain unemployed, it would be very, very difficult for others people with disability who might not have a chance to enter university, or coming from rural areas who might not even finish high school. So I started switching around and look for a position in HR, where I hoped that I would be able to open the gates that would allow a couple or dozens of people with disability to enter the workforce in office position. And then from that, we can try to spread around this idea and hopefully help other companies open more position for these people. But things didn't be as easy as I thought. And I had to go through several jobs, all of which were not exactly related to what I wanted to do, but they all helped me develop a better understanding of how business works and to see all the position inside that operations inside those operations that might be able to fit in a person with disabilities. And after I left my last job, one of my friends saw the announcement of Cytex. They were looking for a person who have good understanding of people with disability and also a good connection with NGOs in Vietnam to help their new projects, which is called Recuts, where they wanted to hire and train people with disabilities in some of the steps or processes, some of the processes with inside the company, which is all around manufacturing denim. And that's why I'm here. I've been working here for 8 months so far.
Right. Thank you so much, Sue. I really, really love your story, especially the part that you were thinking about, even with you getting the good educations and good degree from a top university, but then still it's struggling for you to get employment opportunities. So, and then you don't stop there and think just, you're thinking didn't just stop there. You also think one step further. So what about people who are not as, getting the same level of educations? What about them? So you really think also on behalf of themselves. So if I can just summarize and also borrow the line from Hita in the beginning, being the bridges and bring the voices of people from your community. So what I've heard from the stories just now is, through 2T is about education, through Sadexa is through social entrepreneurship, and through 2 is about, bringing more employment opportunities for people in your community. So I think that's one of the key things that we can dig deeper. And so let's move on to the second question that I want to ask to all of panelists. So let's go geographically from the west to the east. So let's start from 2T again. So so my question to all of you is, it's the same. Can you share a bit about the stories of people who benefit from your organization, from your initiative? Any young person or any people from benefited from your initiative. So over to you, Tuti.
Thank you very much, Linka. Once again, because we work in a government agency, the Palau Energy Administration is working closely with the renewable energy targets for Palau, the NDCs. So it's not a direct assistance to a young lady. It was actually an assistance to her father. And we were getting these small systems. I think Sadiqa in Nepal, you showed that small little solar panel light. It was similar system like that, but we were fortunate enough to get it from a company from Japan. So make a long story short, in Palau, if you want to connect to the grid for power within the main island group, if you don't have a power pole within a certain meters of the house, then you have to buy the pole and then the services to connect it. Unfortunately, the individual's household was kind of far away from the grid. So the cost of actually paying for the telephone poles and then connecting the power to the house will be a lot more than the actual house itself. So this little system of one small panel, one light, we were able to give to him, and he was able to put it into his daughter's room. So no longer is she doing her homework using candles or kerosene because they're so far away from the grid. She was able to actually use the solar light to actually be able to do homework. So she's now able to do homework a little bit later at night, which is for him was the most important thing. He, as a father, you always want to make sure you give your best to your kids, but in this context, it was indirectly to his daughter. So I was very happy that we were not directly the producers of the system, but we were able to give him the system to use. And the second one is we're happy that a young man is actually be able to put his whole household. It's a 10 kilowatt battery system that was just recently commissioned about 2 months ago. And that was not something that we directly gave the individual, but because of the programs we work with through the National Development Bank of Palau as well as the different companies who install. They were able to put his house with lights and be able to support the internet connection, telephone connection, just using 10 kilowatts of battery storage. So we're looking at both systems to see how we can like monitor as a pilot project, so that if it's useful, we can bring it to the islands that are southwest of Palau, about 800 miles southwest. They're so far away that we cannot put a power grid there. So we're looking at a possibility of a solar grid or these individual systems that we've given to people here in Koror as well as in Babagab, the biggest area that we have. So that's the story I'd like to share. I'd just like to add one thing, if I may. I'm sorry, Linka, but what I forgot to mention was this idea of a youth group or youth core earlier, and what Ernest was talking about in terms of relationships is get young men and women to develop this youth core to work with traditional groups within their villages and states to monitor, to learn and be able to solve those issues that they see in their particular community. So that's a story I'd like to share from Palau. So thank you very much for letting me share that story with you.
Thank you so much, Tuti. I think those two stories are very, very, if I can also just summarize it as two reminders, especially the first stories of a father who is able to give more light to his daughter, to do homework through solar energy. So I think for me, it's a reminder of there are a lot of things that we've taken for granted, but then it's a huge things for other individuals. And, a lot of things are very, very small to us that we are very used to it in our daily life. It means a whole world to many other people. So thank you so much for sharing this very, very beautiful, these two stories. So let's move a bit westward, so that will bring us to Vietnam. So let's hear from Tu. Can you share us a bit stories of people who benefit from your initiative, from your work?
In terms of, can you hear me clearly? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of people who benefit from the project that I'm doing right now, right here in SciTex, it would be quite difficult for me to name one individual. So I would prefer talking to them as a group of people. So as I just shared with you previously, I'm doing several projects that aim at creating social impact in the local community, and the biggest one is recuts. It means that you cut a piece, metaphorically means that you could cut a piece of old fabric into a completely new product or a new piece of fabric that could be used for another purpose. So what we're doing here is now to recruit people with disabilities into the company. We set up an accessible factory for them for navigation. So if you are a wheelchair user, you have a ramp completely accessible for you to go up the stairs by yourself. We also have accessible restrooms for you to use, and also an accessible canteen for everyone to have lunch there. We hire them regardless of their background and education. We try to train them into doing like hand embroidery, using sewing machine, or other steps inside the scope of the company, which is manufacturing denim or fabric. And also a part of the project is to reduce the amount of waste that the company is outputting, especially the fabric that are unwanted from other factory because it didn't meet the standards from our customers. So we train these people to work on those kind of fabric and turn them into high and higher quality products such as pillow cover, bags, shorts, and jackets, and try to establish a dedicated website to sell it online. And this project has attracted the attention from IKEA, one of our very large customers, and we are in the process of negotiating a very large project for the upcoming years, where we wanted to have around 250 and 300 people with disability inside the factory to produce the whole line of products that they have asked for. And I mean, this is a very great opportunity for both these people and Cytex, because in terms of a business, we are attracting new orders, which would lead to profits in the end. And also we somehow in the process managed to give those who are less likely to find a job elsewhere a stable job where they could have all the social benefits plus a steady income every month that they could support themselves or their family financially.
Right. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing too. So what I've heard is that, it's an employment opportunity, but it's also, a good inclusive working environment with accessible toilets, making sure that everything is friendly for everyone and with also fair and equal pay. So, they can actually contribute and also support their family because of your project, because of your effort. So thank you so much for sharing that. So let's move on before we move on, I just want to also mention to you in the chat box, we have a lot of people really appreciate your story and also would love to know more about Cytex. So one of our organizer will also share more details of Cytex in the chat box. You can check it out. So let's move on to Sadeksa in Nepal. So the same question goes to you. Any stories, any people that benefit from your initiative?
So there are, I work with a lot of women groups here in Nepal through Solar Forward, as the distribution of our products is directed for their ultimate benefits. And what happened as I was working on one of the earthquake affected district, I came across this scene of where a baby trouser was set to dry over a solar panel. And coming from someone with electronics and communication background, I would at once know that putting anything on over the solar panel would affect on its operation. And that very day and that site urged me to also work for advocacy on clean energy solutions, as in how to use it for the women, and making sure that the manual of the work of the technology provided, technology they will buy from us, will be imprinted in our Nepali language itself. So this has helped us remarkable since we made that changes to our work. And yes, the need since that day we shifted our focus from advocating not only providing to affordable clean energy solutions, but also the advocating on clean energy solutions for climate change, and thereby engaging young girls as energy leader of tomorrow for conducting workshops in their locality and raise voices on spreading the energy provisions of the local government.
Right. Thank you so much, Sadeksa. I think it's really important to when you are, bringing the solar energy, when you're bringing your solutions to people that who will benefit, really think on behalf of themselves. They don't have, as you mentioned, they don't have engineering background. Maybe they don't read other language apart from Nepali. So really how to design something that people can really accept with the lowest barrier possible. So yeah, I think as for now, I can see that a lot of learning from our panelists. I hope that you're taking notes of how you can leave no one behind when you are doing your climate actions, either it's campaigning, social enterprises, running an NGO. So it's really about putting this human perspective, thinking about people who you're serving to, thinking about how they, at the end of the day, they have this very satisfying smile on their face. So I have my last question to all the panelists now. And the last question, let's go from south to the north. So I guess that would be it's going to be the same sequence. So my last question to all of you is that, so based on your, experience, observation, any last things that you want to call for everyone here, that we have all delegates in the Zoom, and we also have delegates listening from YouTube. Hello there. So can you share a little bit of your experience, observations? How can people, especially young leaders here who are running their organizations, their initiative, how they can leave no one behind? So let's go from southward, the south to the north. So let's start from Tuti.
Thank you very much, Linka. I just also want to mention that we're at sea level, and Sadiqa in Nepal is a little bit higher than us, so we'll just go from the lowest to the highest at this time. So I think the most important experience that I have as a government agency is the need in what Ernest said, and the reason I'm always quoting Ernest now is he was sort of the last speaker that I caught when I logged in to the presentation. So I'm sure everyone has heard other speakers with other ideas. I'm just using Ernest because of the fact that I caught him last. And he really talked about being circular, being continuous, and identifying those potentials. Those are the three things that I connected to in the context of leaving no one behind. And I think I want to be clear that leaving no one behind doesn't just mean youth, individuals with disabilities, different individuals in our communities. It means don't leave anyone behind. Palau, for good or bad, we're a very small country. We only have 20,000 on island. So it really means a lot more when you talk about don't leave no one behind, because each individual person that lives here in Palau, whether they're from Palau or they are working here in Palau, is an individual human being that is of great value. They're more valuable than things that we can buy online. So in the context of relationships, unfortunately, the world today doesn't allow us to really empathize. We only see people on the news and on TV, and we have the stereotype of them. And I've been very blessed to live in Palau, where, yes, we are south, we're on the westernmost of the Pacific. To the north, west of us is the Philippines. And then further west, we have Vietnam. And then further northwest is up to Nepal. Even south, we have PNG and then Australia. So we have different people and groups coming in now because of our location. And it's very refreshing to walk down the street and hear a different language. So I'm listening to Japanese, I'm listening to Mandarin, I'm listening to Korean, I'm listening to somebody from Bangladesh, somebody speaking Tagalog. It's English, some Europeans coming in, some Russians coming into Palau. So the important thing is relationships. And what I mean by relationships is not just, trying to make an effort to get to know people, but connecting with them and really knowing where they're from, how they do things, and why they do things that they do. And this type of webinar allows us to connect in this unfortunate situation we're in with COVID, where because of our size, we were able to close our borders, and we don't have a COVID We don't have one COVID case in Palau. So we've been COVID-free since the beginning of last year, and we hope to be COVID-free after we get our vaccines more. So relationships and potential. Unfortunately, like leaders around the world, we don't take our youth seriously. We tell our youth to go and learn, but we don't want to listen to their advice. Listening to people that have been presenting today, I taking note that as a government, I say waiting because I'm doing a survey for a grant, but literally become partners with them so that they can develop and come up with solutions to these problems, because these are not just my problems. These are actually going to be their problems when they get my age. And then have to deal with the consequence of the decisions I made on their behalf because we're not enough proper action. And the final thing is the potential. When I don't mean just be prepared because climate change or we need to do climate action. Prepare for anything. We've been very blessed in Palau, and I try to look at the positive side of things to close our borders, but then it also forces us to actually answer the question, can we actually grow our own food? Can we actually clean our own water? Can we grow and live a lifestyle that we're accustomed to now and do things on our own as best as possible? We're still globally connected, but are there things on island that I can do for myself? And the answer has been yes. The problem is we're just not used to doing it in that particular way. So connecting with our youth and developing this youth core. And I want to thank the young men and women that are online now for sharing some of their thoughts and developing relationships and remembering the potential of young men and women. Yeah, we keep talking about the future, but we don't let them make decisions and help us with the present. So thank you all for allowing me to share that thought and teaching me to look at those particular ideas that young men and women bring. And I'm no longer just looking at you as saying, during my generation, we did it this way. I'm actually now learning to listen to what you have to say as a true partner, not just because you're a youth, but you're actually a true partner and developing these relationships that we have. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'm hoping that what we shared is very useful to you in the work that you do. Even though we're from a very small island in Palau, we're reaching out to the rest of you online. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and time to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tuti. I'm just thinking if I'm not a moderator now, I'll be just crying because your message are just so warm and so touching. When you say that, you're just saying that young people should be given enough trust and also being more included into making decisions, not, the reason maybe, we're still being pushed to learn is because, we're not being trusted enough to take actions. That's why, the suggestion is that you need to learn more before you take actions, but the trust should actually comes first, that we can already take actions. So thank you so much for saying that. Another thing that I also want to highlight is that even though, very beautiful that you say that Palau is living in a very sufficient and also self-sustaining way. It's also part of the global community. Even though now the flights and everything with passengers are not very active, but we're still part of this global trading system. So I think all of us, when we're making decisions, we are all part of this ecosystem of everything, of this connectivity. So next time when you make a decision to join this initiative or to purchase these items or not, think about the faces of maybe the faces of Tuti, faces of people from Palau. Is your decision going to make any impact on them? Of course it does. So are you making the right decision for them? So let's move on to based on Tuti's direction. Let's move a little bit at the in terms of the, what do you call it, technical term in the height of the land. So let's move to Vietnam. So let's hear from Tu.
Okay. Well, because my expertise in diversity and inclusion, and I have worked with people with disability for many years. So I would want to say that, to share that to all the organizations who are working on climate actions, please remember to include this group of people into your brainstorming stage or any stage that you might have, because this group is a part of us. They will be affected by any changes in the climate, and also they might face more difficulties when disaster strikes. So it's very important for them to give their opinion. Just because they have some sort of disability doesn't necessarily mean that they are less capable than others. They might be more observant, they might be more creative, and maybe their experience living in the local area is far more sufficient than anyone else. So please, I urge you to include this group of people, and not just people who displays visible disabilities like having, how could I say, a weak leg or being on a wheelchair, but also there are we are, how could I say, more and more aware of hidden disabilities. People might have some sort of disability that do not make itself clear to others. So try to be considerate and ask around. It's way better to have more opinion than missing out. And also, I would also want to have some words with people who consider themselves having disabilities. If you want to be recognized as equal as other, it's time for you to take a share of the responsibilities that others are taking, and one of which is some doing any action that toward keeping the climate stable. Because as I said, you will be affected and you might face more difficulty when things do not go the way you wanted. So try to do even a smaller action to make sure that you keep yourself, how can I say it, included in this kind of action. For example, I personally only go to coffee shop that serve beverages in glasses made from glass, if that makes sense to you, instead of those shops that only serve beverage in plastic glass. And even though it's very small, but let's just imagine how would it impact the environment, the earth, if thousands of you, millions of you do the same thing. I think that's all I wanted to share.
Great, thank you so much too. I think a lot of people also share and strongly agree with you in the chat box. And I would also like to encourage all of us here who are, leading your own climate actions, climate initiative. Think about how many of them are actually from marginalized or people with disabilities community, and how can you also make extra effort to include them? And I think what I've also learned from too as well is that, just as we are asking for trust from other people to give young people to take actions, I think the trust comes from both sides with marginalized communities. We also need to give trust, and we also need to start building the trust. So thank you so much for that message. So let's move to Satixa, the highest elevation point of this panel. Thank you so much for Aloy for reminding me. So yes, so over to you, Satixa. Oh, all right, she's back. Hi, Satixa, can you hear us?
Yes. What I'm always sharing what I have so far experienced on on topics for which would work for leaving no one behind. As in, what I have experienced is like community immersion and local a local adaptation to the endeavors in climate change has to go hand in hand. And what I have experienced is learning to the community immersion and learning the behaviors of the people, mainly the youths, the energy leaders of tomorrow, and the pattern of their adaptation to the clean technologies and the behavior towards environment. It has a significant effect in fighting against climate change, and we as a youth should be more concerned about such kind of adaptations, which it is the least we can do by changing our behavior, right? So I urge every youth to come to think that way and commit to the fighting against the climate change together.
Right. Thank you so much, Satiksa. I think it's really about, as you mentioned, being humble enough to really understand people that you are serving and really understand, how can you deliver your service to them, to optimize their benefit as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Tuti, Tu, and Satiksa for this wonderful panel. So with that, let me conclude this panel with our thankful and also thank you so much for joining, and I hope that all of you who are listening to this panel have some takeaways of things that you can apply to your climate actions. Thank you so much, and over to you, Jules.
Thank you so much, Lenka, for moderating our first panel discussion focusing on leaving no youth behind on climate action. And also thank you to all our brilliant panelists. Let's give them a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much. And at this point, we'll proceed to another session, which we call a hot seat discussion, focusing on the roles and identities that young people can play in the climate promise dialogue. Okay, so this next session will be facilitated by the Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Consultant to the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub. Let's welcome Din Long Pham. Din Long, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Jules. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited and happy to be with you all, especially after this amazing panel. And yeah, we are still 700 in this call. Imagine this is one of a lifetime experience. I've never been in a 700 people Zoom call, especially when it's with young climate activists from all over the region, even some people who are in the US, and it's 3 a.m. So congrats to you. Yeah, so please do share in the chat how you are feeling, maybe in one word, just to see if you still have energy after 2 hours speaking about climate change and listening to amazing stories. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm basically the copy-paste of Linka, even the title, we have the same title. So copy-paste of Linka, that's very easy. Also work with UNDP and the Movers program. And today we'll have the hot seat session. It will be a very interactive session. So we really hope to have a lot of interaction in the chat, in the Zoom chat. So please be ready, be excited. But first, let me welcome all our speakers on our virtual stage. So please give first a first round of applause to Pamela Mejia. She's a fashion social entrepreneur and she founded Phoenix and Fibers Collective. So I will do the sound as well from my side. Welcome, Pamela.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon from Manila, Philippines. Hello.
Awesome. So next on stage, I will invite Swan Mai Huang. So she's a climate journalist and she also has experience in youth engagement. And she was a former Southeast Asia program lead at Climate Tracker. So please make some noise on the chat for Mai.
Hello.
Hi, Mai.
I can't start my video because the host has stopped me.
Okay, so while we are fixing this technical issue,
okay.
I will
I'm here.
invite. Okay, perfect. So nice to see you,
Okay.
Mai.
Yeah, hi everyone
So
again. I'm Mai
yeah,
and
next on
I'm based in
the
Vietnam.
amazing. Cool. So next on the virtual stage, let me invite Mohsen Gul. So he has experience in youth engagement, research, policy making, and even more. I wouldn't have time to say everything that he's been doing, and he's currently the climate change youth specialist for the Asian Development Bank. So Mohsen, welcome.
Thank you, Dun Long, and really looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Amazing, and please, a final round of applause for our last speaker of the session. So I will invite Shan Suhas Kumar. So she has experience as well in youth engagement, in climate communication, and she's a climate activist and was Miss Earth India in 2017. So Shan, welcome.
Thank you, Dun Long. Great to be here with everybody else on the panel.
Cool. So thank you. So we'll have some time. So I will explain a bit what was the intention of the session, what is a hot seat. But first, I want to ask a question to all our audience. I will ask you for a number. Please just keep this number in mind for now. Don't share on the chat. Don't share yet. But I will ask you to think about, from a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the highest, how would you grade your personal climate action? So keep this number in mind. We will ask you to share this number on our favorite tool, which is called Mentimeter. So yeah, just connect there, put the number. We will share on the chat as well. So you just need to go on menti.com and put the code 7604531 and put a number from 0 to 10 that represents your level of satisfaction regarding your personal climate action. So while we will see some numbers showing up on the screen, you can also share on the Zoom chat if you cannot access Mentimeter. So while we look at that, I will just explain a bit the concept of hot seat and why we're having this session. But as you have seen, there are so many ways that you can take climate action. There's as many ways as there are people. And today we really wanted to gather 4 amazing young climate activists so they can share their experience, they can share their role as well. So we have a social entrepreneur, a climate journalist, a climate activist, and an educator, a teacher, a researcher, a youth engager. So we have pretty much a lot of different roles today. So, and the concept of hot seat is really simple. We wanted to go beyond a bit the panel discussion and imagine I'm on the moderator seat. And imagine that this seat is a hot seat, so I cannot really sit on it for a long time. So I will need to go up and someone else will take my seat, and this person will be able to ask questions and will also give some chance for the audience to take some of the decisions in this session. So basically, yeah, that's really today to learn about the experience of our 4 amazing speakers. We start to see a lot of numbers on the screen. So we can see 0, we can see 10. So I'm sure 10 is Hita or any of the speakers that we have seen, might be Ernest as well. So interestingly, every time I ask this question, 5 is the number that comes. We don't want to be overestimating ourselves or underestimating ourselves. So 5. Yeah, so please continue sharing on Mentimeter, on the chat. I will stop sharing my screen and I will start with the first part. Maybe just invite everyone to introduce yourself, who you are, what is your climate advocacy, and also if you can put words on what is the role that you are playing in climate action, so we can all really understand very obviously what is the role that you're taking. And for this, maybe I will ask the audience. So the audience, who would you like to hear from first? Just type some names on the chat. The person with the most name, I will invite this person to start. If you don't know, just answer randomly. And then I will ask the first person who introduced her or himself, you can just pass it on to the next speaker. And the last speaker, you can pass it back to me in the end. Okay, I see a lot of Pamela. So yeah, Pamela, the floor is yours.
So much pressure there. So again, hi everyone. Good afternoon from the Philippines. I am Pamela Mejia and I am the founder of Phoenix. I guess just to give you a background first, guess I'm invited by the UNDP because I was the Youth Collab champion in the Philippines back in 2017, and I was also the regional champion for Youth Collab in Thailand, and I was also the winner of the SDG Innovative Awards for Youth Collab in Beijing. So I'm really proud to be part of the Youth Collab family. So as I said, I am the founder of Phoenix. What we do is we collect textile waste such as old clothes and fabric scraps, and we transform them into higher valued products such as shoes, bags, and now we're leaning towards homeware and furniture. So just to give you an example, actually, we have two ways of upcycling textile waste. First is we cut directly from the fabric. So like here's our latest collection. So we use old kimonos and we turn them into shoes like this. Our other way of upcycling is we actually cut the clothes into strips like this, and we weave them to a whole new fabric like this one. So from the textile waste to this new fabric, we turn this new fabric into shoes like this. So we also turn them into bags. So that is our environmental advocacy, but also all the everybody who does our products are made by local artisans in the Philippines who have lost their jobs. But then all our textile weavers, if you've seen in our short documentary shown earlier, all our textile weavers, everybody who weaves our fabrics are persons with disability. So I guess my role in terms of like in the climate action is I'm really in the fashion industry, and we are one of the largest polluters in the world. And I guess even here in the Philippines, we really don't have a textile recycling center. So the reason why I really wanted to put up Phoenix is to, reduce textile waste and do product life extension. And it's really my mission to for us to become the premier textile recycling center, not just in our country, but to actually replicate this in other ASEAN countries, because we really advocate for SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production, as well as SDG 13, which is climate change. So yeah, hopefully in our own little fashion social enterprise, we actually contribute to less textile waste in the landfills. So thank you, everybody. Oh, do I decide who's next, or okay, let's hear it from Mai.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. Wow, that was really wonderful. Kind of nervous going after you. So I don't have any prototype of things to show people because I write, but I guess if you're interested, you can find some of my articles about climate change online. So I started becoming interested and passionate about climate change really through my experience as a freelance journalist. I went to school in the US and started writing about a couple of different topics, but climate change really stood out to me as one of the most important issues that youth should know and care about. So I started pitching to various news outlets in Vietnam. And then long story short, I ended up being connected with Climate Tracker, and I went to COP24 in Poland with them as one of their fellows. And Sean might share the experience of being a Climate Tracker fellow as well. I had no idea that we had two former fellows on this panel, but it's really cool getting connected with a really vibrant group of writers and journalists, both professional and otherwise, and photographers, and just like really cool people who want to tell the climate story in a better way in their country, and really cover the negotiations that are going on around this issue in a way that youth can also understand, what NDCs mean, what COP means, and why they should care and why they should be involved and read the articles. So after that experience in 2018, I came on board with Climate Tracker and was a part of their team from 2019 until a month ago, actually. So I was first the youth program lead and then the Southeast Asia program lead at Climate Tracker. And now I'm back to freelance writing and also supporting youth climate action in Vietnam through YNET, which you will hear more about tomorrow. So I won't spoil that part yet.
You can choose the next one.
I will pick Sean.
Thank you so much, Mai. First of all, I just want to say it's so great to be here, especially with the four of you and Din Long. Thank you for having us. I saw in the chat somebody's joined. I think there was Jonathan from Mexico who's joined at 2:19 a.m. And I am so thrilled with the audience that we have today. So hi, everyone. My name is Shan. I am from India. And I have been a development professional for the past 8 years. I see my role more as an advocate and someone who has taken upon herself to make people aware about the climate crisis and sustainable development in general. I actually don't work in climate action full time. I work for women's leadership in the Asian region. But I think that's what's really exciting to me about being on this panel is that I understand that a lot of you are interested in climate action. A lot of you here today are people who want to learn more about how they can make a difference. And it is very possible that many of you will not work full time for environmental protection or for climate action, but I'm here to share my experience of doing that outside of my job. I have, like Mai shared, I was a Climate Tracker South Asia Fellow. I was writing for climate back in 2016 and reported from the Asia Pacific Adaptation Forum in Sri Lanka. I was a climate reality leader, so I did a lot of presentations to sensitize people about climate action across my country. As my role as Miss Earth India, I went to in schools and institutions and sensitized 10,000 people about sustainable development, environmental issues that we're facing in India at the moment. And I will share more about my journey as we go along in this panel. But mostly, I think my role has been in the past few years to understand where I fit in and how I can best contribute to climate action in what I'm good at. And so I'll be happy to share about that. With this, I'd love to pass it on to Mohsen.
Thank you, Sean. It's amazing to be sharing this panel with such girl power. But for myself, I've just tried to make sense of what I'm good at and trying to push that in the climate change agenda as an individual, as a professional. So I have a PhD in environmental governance, so that is a natural fit for me in this whole process. But I've been working with young people for over last 10 years, starting from youth leadership to now in the more climate change arena, because everyone's starting to get the gist of why it's so important to work on climate change. And since 2016 or 17, after the climate movement, we've really seen that the agenda is growing and everyone wants to come on the board and help. But there's growing frustration as to what to do of this potential. And that is where people like myself come in. So I like to call myself as this inside person, because I always thought that sitting at the periphery. So I created an organization, a youth-led organization, Green Box, which is already doing work on youth-led research in climate change and environmental stewardship area, working on circular economy concepts and all. But then I just realized it's not the young people who are failing, it's the system that is failing the young people. So what do we do about it? So I started to come from the policy end then, and now in with my role at Asian Development Bank as the climate change youth specialist, or my role with UNDP Pakistan as the youth advisor. So I'm really trying to push for instrumental changes through which young people could be mainstreamed in all these systems and processes. Only then we'll be able to fully leverage the potential which young people can bring on the board. So really looking forward to the discussion later today. Thank you. Over to you, Din.
Thank you so much, Mohsen, and everyone. Yeah, we have a beautiful girl power today, so it's really, really nice. And yeah, you know, I usually answer 5 out of 10, but after listening to you all, I might answer -5 out of 10. So I think, and also news from the Mentimeter, I think 5 and 6 are fighting together now to be on the center of the Mentimeter. So I think it's going up as the time goes. So yeah, I think we'll move on to the next session, next section, which is basically we'll follow the same format. So I will not be the one asking the question. I think, you know, with this session is very nice. I don't have to work a lot. I just here to check the time and to smile. But yeah, no, basically the next section So we'll follow the same thing, right? So when someone will ask a question to someone else, and that person will ask a question to someone else, and yeah, I think it's better this way, so you can all interact with each other. So yeah, if that's clear, maybe I will invite you, Mohsen. So you were the last one to speak. Maybe you can be the first one to ask a question.
Sure, thank you, Dan. I think I'm interested to ask a question to Pamela. So Pam, you started at 17 and you established 4 fashion businesses. You've come a long way in this sustainable fashion agenda. So my question to you is that based on your experiences so far, where do you think we as young people currently stand in tackling climate change through sustainable fashion? And what's in it for more inspiring entrepreneurs? Thank you.
Thank you, Mo, for that question. Honestly, for me, I really believe when it comes to doing our own steps towards climate change, we start with ourselves. And when it comes to, let's say, just with sustainable fashion, I always tell this to people that it actually starts with our wardrobe. For example, just for example, are we aware that we should be wearing our clothes 30 to 40 times at least, before throwing them out or upcycling them or recycling them? These are just things that, do we actually think about things like this? Or when we wash our clothes, do you know that when you actually do the laundry, you should actually fill your washing machine up to the brim, because there's less friction, meaning there's less micro plastics in the water. So things these little things actually make a lot of difference in terms of our action towards climate change. But at the same time, things in a world full of, for example, in the fashion industry, a lot of the marketing messages is always about luxury or buy this all the time, almost every week. All the big companies have instilled in us that we should buy new clothes, right? But right now is our time to decide and choose that we should actually, first of all, buy local. And if you could actually, it's better to buy from fashion social enterprises, like Phoenix or other, these brands. We should be, there's it's up to us to decide to support which brands are we actually helping, the big ones that actually contribute to more climate change, or the small ones like us, who doesn't only help the environment but also have social impact. So those are, as consumers, are things that we could actually do towards sustainable fashion. But if you're someone, for example, like me, who wants to actually open their own social enterprise or their own business towards sustainable fashion, my tip is still the same. Start with your wardrobe, because to me, when I started Phoenix, I was looking into what is one of the biggest problems of the fashion industry, and it's textile waste. And how Phoenix started was, I literally just went to my wardrobe and I checked which dress I wasn't wearing anymore, and then I went to my shoemakers and asked them to make it into shoes. And then after 2 days, we already have these new products. And that's the birth of Phoenix. So I guess my advice would always be to start making a change. Start within yourself, start within your wardrobe, start within your home. So yeah, Mo, did that answer your question?
It did. I just have a follow-up question to this, this slow fashion versus fast fashion debate, and especially for students or young people like ourselves who cannot afford expensive or, better quality products on market just because we cannot pay a certain amount of money. So we rely on fast fashion products. So do you believe that this industry will become cheaper and this will open up to more customers, especially young people?
I guess the system will continue being like this if we allow it. If we as consumers keep on buying from these companies, the fast fashion companies, then the system will not change. And also the fast fashion stores are not the only stores you can actually get sustainable fashion products from. for example, I love going to vintage stores. Like this dress that I'm wearing is 50 cents, like 50 US dollar cents. So it's all about just making the right choices. If the fast fashion stores is not the way to go, then be more creative, be more resourceful. There are vintage stores, there are fashion social enterprises. You can actually ask your friends to do clothes swapping. So there are a lot of ways. You just have to be really resourceful. Yeah. Is that it, Amo? Okay. Okay, now I'd like to ask a question over to Sean. Hi. So, like, going back to just connecting with what Mo asked me actually about this whole sustainable fashion thing. So in my industry, right, like the fashion industry is known as the one of the largest polluter in the world. So now a lot of people know that already. And just like what Mo pointed out a while ago, there is still like a big gap between, people taking action towards it. So like in whatever industry, whether it's in fashion or agriculture or health, how do we actually address, there's this awareness versus the gap in, taking action? Like, so how do we convince more people to actually take action, knowing that there is already an awareness towards, climate change?
First of all, I just want to say that everything that you said, I resonate with so much. And Pamela shared about her journey with just using, her clothes to convert them and upcycle them into something new. I was actually in a beauty pageant. So there was a lot of pressure, number one, to just wear new clothes every day because you're being photographed. And there was also a lot of pressure to just be like with a lot of makeup and your hair and your products. And I know somebody in the chat also asked, what do you think about the beauty industry? And I think for me, it was about a lot of reflection as to, yes, I care about the climate. And I care about the environment, but I'm also taking part in something that has its own requirements. And how do I stand up for what I believe in? And how do I make changes to my own lifestyle to be able to fit into the competition that I'm a part of, but also just be myself? And so it was, I would say it wasn't an overnight process. It took me a lot of time to think and feel how am I feeling when I buy something new? Am I going to use this again? And when I look at clothes that I bought and I was photographed in once and never wore again, how does that make me feel? And where is this going to go? So it was a lot of reflection for me. And I think when you ask about awareness and action gap, I think reflection plays a huge role. With everyone on this panel, I'm pretty sure you have a deeper story which serves as your why, as to why you have chosen out of all the issues in the world to dedicate time and energy to work for climate action. And to everyone watching, I would say the same thing. Think of your why. Think of why you're here today, and think of what you're good at. And how do you put those two things together? And how do you contribute? So like I said at the beginning as well, I don't work full-time for climate action. I work for women's leadership with an organization called We Do. And in my role, I obviously think about, okay, so women's leadership is something I also really care about. Gender equality is also something that I really care about. And today, the youth of the world, we care about a lot of things, and that's fantastic. That should be our strength. But it also means that because climate change is one of the most pressing challenges of our time, wherein I know for a fact, sitting when I'm working every day, that no matter how much progress we make with women empowerment, with education, with infrastructure, with 10,000 other things, if we don't work on climate change, it can all be undone quite quickly. And so that is always at the back of my head. So just some actionable steps that I would say how to work on that awareness versus action gap is think about what you're good at. As in, what is your skill? Like over here, Maya and I went through the same experience. We both wrote for climate, but I realized very soon that writing was not my thing. So then I was like, so what am I good at? I'm good at facilitation. I'm good at speaking to people, making them aware. That's what I'm going to do. Similarly, Mohsen is doing great work with Greenbox, as well as just full-time being a scientist and researcher. But again, that's not for me. So I'm doing what I'm doing, but I've also kind of realized what my strengths are and how can I use that to sensitize people around me, especially starting with my friends and family. And it's really funny, but friends and family are the most difficult people to convince to do anything. I also just want to highlight one more thing that, and this is for everyone in the audience. Is there anyone who has told you that you are wrong and you have actually like done whatever they've said? Like anyone who said, no, you're wrong, that's not right, you need to do this way. Have you ever appreciated that? And so one thing that I've realized in my journey of telling people about climate is that when people disagree with you, listen to why and try and figure out where they're coming from and what can we do, like in your family or your friends, like what are some examples you can set for them, which makes them not feel like it's too inconvenient to do something or them disagreeing with you. So always just be open to a conversation. It takes patience and time to get things done. Think about your skills. I studied filmmaking, so I actually created a documentary on biodiversity and climate habitat. I was a part of the Teach for India Fellows, so I brought the theme of Captain Planet into my class of 4th graders to instill that sense of saving the planet and what the environment means to 4th graders in my class. I worked with an organization to create a climate quiz for 140 teams in my district, again, to sensitize them about the climate issues. So there's so many things that you can do. And it all starts with like, okay, what am I good at? How can I do this? Doing anything is better than doing nothing. And so just think about that and try and change things. All right, I'm done speaking. And I think because Mai and I share like a common experience, my question is to Mai. And my question to you, Mai, is mostly, like I said, I wasn't the best at writing. And so it is about the media and climate change. And I do want to know from you that out of all the things that we all are doing on this panel, what made you pick writing in the media? And how can we involve more and more youth in that process? I also have I have one more question. What are the challenges that you faced in the Asia Pacific region in climate journalism?
Okay, those are all very good questions, and I'm going to try to answer all of them. So thank you so much, Sean. For the first question, I think I'm going to answer why climate journalism and climate change in the media matters, both for people who think that they are good at writing or that they care about writing, and for people who don't. So firstly, I think it's very easy for youth to overlook traditional media because traditional media, as in like the mainstream print outlets or the mainstream digital outlets and television channels, can be seen as like outdated, especially in the Asia Pacific region, where a lot of them still use more, traditional or quote unquote boring like storytelling methods, especially when it comes to climate change, which is a very scientific or could be a very scientific topic. A lot of youth advocates and youth advocacy groups focus more on social media as a consequence of that, because it is true that social media is very prominent in our daily lives nowadays. But I truly believe that traditional media and mainstream media still have a very big role to play in shifting how people think about climate change and climate solutions. I mean, if you really think about it, even when you're talking on Twitter or talking on Facebook, right, usually you would link articles that you see online, and it's the tone of these articles and how journalists describe concepts like energy or agriculture or climate science that really dictates the tone of the discourse on social media and in everyday life. So I think climate change can be a very sexy topic if people learn how to write about it the right way. And when I say the right way, I mean, there's no like hard and fast formula for every climate change story. However, one of the things that we usually emphasize at Climate Tracker is really trying to bring out a human interest story, because climate change can really seem like it's just the numbers, it's the research that comes out of the IPCC, it's these really didactic and boring conversations that you immediately zone out. Like, I think it is true that some people are getting a deluge of information so much that whenever they hear the word climate change, they zone out. But there's a way to tell these stories that really brings out how it impacts the day-to-day life of people who are relying on fishing for their livelihoods, and they're facing depletion of their fishing resources, of people who are going to work and they're experiencing heat waves and how it's impacting their health and their day-to-day job, and really bringing out those human stories through multimedia journalism, through just really having good conversations and showcasing that in your writing really matters. And if you're a young person interested in journalism, I just say go for it, because I was actually only 16 when I joined Climate Tracker, when I first joined Climate Tracker as a fellow. And then previously, the youngest fellow we had was 18. Usually people are in their 20s or early 30s, but really you're never too young to be a writer and a journalist. And if you really put yourself out there and learn about one issue in the climate change topic, it is a very broad topic, but if you identify one key issue that you care a lot about and you can bring a unique youth perspective to that story, I just say go for it. Pitch to the relevant news outlets. If one person says no, go to 9 other people and do not give up. I probably had the most stressful week of my life at COP24 because I was in a group with people who were staff writers for The Guardian, Botswana, for Deutsche Welle, for all of these major news outlets. And there was just me as a freelancer, and I was trying to, I couldn't get into some of the press conferences because I wasn't officially with one media outlet. I was just with the Climate Tracker team, but I just walked up to, at COP, there are people with badges that indicate that they're climate negotiators or head of their delegation. So I just tried to catch them while they were grabbing coffee, and was this annoying girl trying to ask them questions about how the negotiations were going on. But that experience really showed me that if you stop thinking about how you're too young, or to stop thinking about, oh, I'm a youth, journalism and talking to negotiators or policymakers is not my role. If you stop thinking about it and just do it, then, and do your research, of course, which really matters, then people will not think about how young you are if you ask a really good question. So yeah, that's my advice for people who are interested in this field. And then to people who have no idea what writing is or what climate journalism is, or has no interest in pursuing it, I still say that being involved is really, really important. If you don't want to be involved as someone who creates the articles or creates the media products, you can still educate yourself. And it's really important to be to have some media literacy skills, because especially when it comes to climate change, in some countries, in the US certainly more so than others, but I think in Vietnam and in Asian media that I've been researching for Climate Tracker, we're seeing a rise of this phenomenon as well, where there's a lot of polarization, and climate change is presented as a quote unquote debate, because these minority voices who have a lot of sort of profit-making interest, push their research, quote unquote research, or push their viewpoints that might not be backed up by fact, but because I don't want to get too much into the niche and the techniques of media and journalism, but just be very careful about what you read, and make sure that you have the skills necessary so that whenever someone sends you a link to an article about climate change that says something and you doubt whether it's accurate or not, you know how to fact check, and you know what to believe, and talk to other people about it as well. So yeah, that is, I hope I answered all of your questions, Sean. Oh, there's one about Asian or journalism in the Asia Pacific region. I don't think we have enough time, but I did a media research project with Climate Tracker about how 5 Southeast Asian countries are covering energy and green growth in the context of COVID. Long story short is there's a lot of business interest in these media outlets, not enough in-depth stories, not enough human and community-focused stories, which is something that Climate Tracker we really hope will change in this year. You can find that research online. Okay, so yep, I am done speaking as well, and I will now ask a question for Mohsen. Mohsen, I was really struck when I listened to your introduction about how you have a lot of experience with environmental governance. You did a whole PhD in it, and you have experience as a consultant, as a professional, working with all of these different intergovernmental organizations. So my question is, I want to hear, what do you think are the best ways for youth to be involved in climate policy? I mean, I think personally, I've chosen the route of climate journalism and writing and being involved with getting to talk to negotiators at conferences, but I'm sure there are a lot of other ways as well. So I want to hear from your perspective.
Thank you, May. And that's a $1 million question. Everyone's trying to answer that these days, but I'll try and make sense of it from my own experience. So let me take you back to 2019. I'm in Nairobi, and I'm attending this Young Champion of the Earth event, and I am the coordinating lead author for this new report coming up this month on global environment outlook for young people. So everyone should check that out. It'll be out on 19th February at the UN Environment Assembly. So I got a chance to meet the Under Secretary General Amina Mohammed, and she said something to me. She said, you need to disrupt the system. And it suddenly struck to me, and that was the time when a lot of climate strikes were going on. And I suddenly thought, maybe she's referring to a lot of young people just rejecting the system and hierarchy around. But I don't think that is what she meant. She meant to say that whatever is in your power, disrupt the system through your actions, as what Sean suggested, what Pam suggested from your wardrobe, what May suggested. Find your one key area which you really want to work on and just go about it. So as Martin Luther King said, if you can't fly, then run, not run, then walk, and if not even walk, crawl. But whatever you do, just keep going about it or moving forward. So that's the kind of agenda and mandate that is needed right now from young people themselves. I understand there is growing frustration with the pandemic at hand. There is an economic recession in place. The young people have less choice to remain young and to start acting like adults. So there is so much push for them to take the lead and pay for all and do something about all the damage that other generations have done. But if not you, who will help? So that's the kind of energy and vision we require as young people collectively to work around this. But then what do we need to do to become capable to do so? We cannot just assume young people have all the skills and the capacity to take lead on climate action. First, we need to understand what are the context of problems. The problem with climate change as a narrative is it's a very big word. Just like sustainable development, it's very abstract. You cannot make sense of it unless you start contextualizing it in local examples. So as May suggested, to find those narratives and field stories, then you'll be able to make sense of your problems in your backyard, in your own home, in your friends and family. So you'll realize that, oh, there is something there is a problem here and we need to do something about it. So you need to invest in your own knowledge of climate science. We need to, as a system, and together all of us need to make pathways for vulnerable and communities who do not have access to this knowledge, or they may not know that they are under tremendous risk. So, helping these high risk communities around us is so important through capacity building, through skills enhancement, through creating those employment opportunities or entrepreneurship opportunities through Youth Collab or through other, incubator programs or to other agencies around us, and to really start talking about these newer effective job opportunities for young people as well. And more than that, help them to take action at the regional, national, global, even at the community level, and to give them training on project management, give them training on how to access climate finance. How many of us young people know about green climate finance, or we know about adaptation fund, or we know about the nationally determined contributions? So everyone is just repeating the same rhetoric again and again. And that's part of my frustration as a policymaker, is everyone just says tokenistically that young people have the potential and we need to leverage it. But what do we actually do on the ground? How do we open these spaces and give them access to the finance, give them access to training on project management, give them training on leading entrepreneurship in their own communities, and how to come together to working around this? So in a nutshell, what is really needed is for us as a system to start changing the system to make it more youth friendly, and to find an open gateway and passages for young people to come in on the decision-making table. Just before I pass it on back to Din, I was at UNESCO and I was trying to push for a decision-making young person on the executive board of UNESCO at the Youth Forum. And I had this big board in my hand, like Greta, saying that we matter and we should be on the stage as well. And you know, it was so frustrating when I was told that legally a young person or an individual cannot be on the board of an executive board. But these are the structures and systems that humans made. And now when our reality is changing and we're going to live in a world where climate change is a reality, we are the only people who can do something about asking these people to change the system, because we matter and there is no point in differentiating with that. Thank you, and over to you, Dan.
Thank you so much. I don't know if you all noticed, but the chat is on fire. Every time someone is speaking, there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages. So that's great. I would love to actually continue this conversation even more, but I know that we are also approaching the end of the session. So we'll be quick. So we have one last round of questions, which is basically 600 people here, many more watching the live stream. What can, what is an advice that you could give them to be a bit more like you in terms of, like the climate advocacy path that you have chosen? And we're a bit short on time, so I will request if you can do that, the elevator pitch mode. So if you can do that in 1 minute, that would be awesome. I know Pamela is used to doing elevator pitch. I also know that Mai needs to leave soon, so maybe Mai, you can start first, and then you can leave silently if you need to.
So elevator pitch, if you want to be a climate journalist, first join a journalism club for young people. If you're still in university, a lot of schools have that. Or if you're not, then I guess watch out for climate tracker opportunities, because we do have a lot of programs that train people who want to get into journalism, and specifically climate journalism. Once you have the basic skill sets, then just go and do it. Don't be scared of messing up. You will mess up, because when you don't have a lot of experience with journalism, you can do things like mistakenly quoting someone that you shouldn't be before confirming with them, or sending your article late to your editor and be super traumatized because you realize that you messed up in a really big way. But that brings me to second tip, which is don't be afraid of messing up. And yeah, just find a specific topic that you have a unique angle on, so something that affects you close at home where you can get to the sources, or is something that you can bring a unique perspective as a young person. Yeah, that's basically my tip. I will pass it on to Pamela.
Okay, so I guess for me, if you want, I like what I shared my experience a while ago. I started Phoenix just by looking at my wardrobe. And then I realized that, textile waste is the problem that annoys me the most. So what all the speakers talked about a while ago, start with a problem that you really resonate to, or you find most annoying or passionate about, that you really want to give solutions to. So that's one, so that at your process of finding solutions for it, you won't get tired of finding solutions because you are really passionate about that certain climate problem. And two is, my advice is be creative with your solutions. Like for me, like who thinks of making old clothes into shoes, right? So be creative. There's so much room for waste and there's so much room for creative solutions. So be resourceful and be creative. So that's my advice. So I'll pass it on to Mo.
Thank you. And agreeing with what May and Pam said, I guess we all need to make a climate promise. We need to arise, awake, and not stop until the goal is achieved, because we know the house is on fire and we will naturally do everything to save it, right? So just to not give up on this momentum and passion, and keep doing whatever you do, from changing your lifestyle to participating in conversations like this, to pushing changes in your office or professional life or the communities around you. Give it all that you can, because this is the reality or a new normal that we are living in together. So I'll pass it on to Shant. Thank you.
I don't think I'll be able to do as good a job as Mohsin did with wrapping that up really quickly, but I've been just writing all over my hand to be able to be succinct this time. I actually want to just shout out to Aloy and Lujin Liu in the chat, because I saw that they wrote that everything is interconnected and that's what we need to understand. And I want to bring that up as like a big thing in this conversation. Even if you're aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, I would urge you to always keep sustainability at the center of whatever you do. Even if you're working on sustainable cities or education or women empowerment, think about how you can bring sustainability in whatever you're doing. And then apart from that, I have just 2-3 points written here very quickly. Number one, learn, find opportunities that will help you to learn, find communities that you could be a part of, whether it's Climate Tracker, Climate Reality, some other local organization working on climate. Find those opportunities. Some of these opportunities really cemented my passion for working for this. And so perhaps you'll find that as well. The second is just start making changes to your lifestyle. Don't set up like a big goal that you're never going to shop again and never going to buy a new piece of clothing, but set some goals. Start somewhere, maybe buy like reusable items, or use reusable items, or buy secondhand, or borrow. Like think about those things that you can change easily. Don't make your life very inconvenient. Sometimes we set ourselves up for failure, which is not great, and then we get discouraged and we don't continue. So try and find things that you can actually do and start doing them to set examples for others. And finally, please share your story. Like Mai said earlier, climate change can be sexy as a topic. And I do want to like put it out there that I started sharing on Instagram, not thinking that it's going to affect anyone. And 2 years ago, someone wrote to me. I actually started sharing on Instagram the lifestyle changes I was making to hold myself accountable. But someone wrote to me 2 years later saying that they were really inspired by my journey, and they have been accepted into an MSc in sustainability in Germany. And they're pursuing that, and this is the path they're choosing. So you never know who you're going to inspire. So do share your story. I'm done and long. Sorry about that.
No, I'm the one who feel bad for making you all speak so fast, So, thank you so much. Just to recap a bit what you all said here. So from my join climate tracker and mess up, you will mess up. Don't be afraid to mess up. From Pam, find the problem that you really care about and be creative when you are finding solutions. From Mo, your new nickname today, make your climate promise, post changes, hustle, continue to make changes around you or within yourself. And from Shan, a lot of things, but set goals, keep sustainability at the core, learn, connect with communities and share what you do. And from Alan in the chat, stop buying milk tea every day. I think that's the perfect sentence to move to the final activity. It will just like last a few minutes, but we have one last activity for all the audience here. So instead of me wrapping up everything, we would love to hear from everyone. Again, on Mentimeter, so I will share my screen again, but what is one sentence that you remember from the discussion? What is one thought, what is one takeaway that you got? What is that one thing that you are leaving the discussion now from the session that you will tell to your parents, to your friend, you will Instagram? What is something that you will keep within yourself? What is one thing that you wrote on your notes. So again, you can connect on Mentimeter. We'd love to see it on the screen so that everyone can see it as well. If you cannot access Mentimeter, write on the chat. And yeah, I think one thing that I got from this session and also today is, tomorrow is Action Day. Today, I'm not sure actually what day it is, but I feel like it's like why day, like find your why. So many people spoke about how important it is to identify which problems that you want to tackle. Climate change is so broad. Which problem do you connect to? And I think it also comes down to why are you here today? Why did you stay 3 hours listening to us, listening to everyone? You could do everything else. You could go drink bubble tea with your friends, but you decided to stay here with us. Why did you join? What is the problem that you want to solve? How do you want to solve it? Do you want to write? Do you want to volunteer? Do you want to start a social startup? So I think that's a key question of today. And I think, yeah, like Shan spoke about awareness, action gap. I feel like for me, I always say that in between awareness and action, there is also connection. Like we are aware of many issues, but before we're taking action, we need to connect with specific issues. So which issues are you connecting with? And yeah, I think I really felt this key question from everyone today, from the first speaker to the last speaker today. And we can see what impacted our audience today on the Mentimeter. There's so many things, yes, it was just endless. But we can see climate journalism, find your why, everything is interconnected. Mai has to leave, so please everyone, a virtual round of applause to Mai. Chat was crazy when Mai was speaking, but you will see her again tomorrow actually, so thank you so much, Mai.
Yes, tomorrow just forget that I was speaking about climate journalism. I'll be speaking about something else tomorrow.
But yeah.
All right, bye everyone.
Tomorrow, bye-bye, Mai. So yeah, I'll just leave that on the screen, maybe 1 minute for all of those who want to still continue inputting. I cannot keep up with the chat on Zoom, it's too quick, but I can keep up a bit on the screen.
Dinlong, I just wanted to say, if one thing people can take away from today would be to read about this concept of One Health, which is about how COVID and climate change and environment, everything is interrelated, as Sean also suggested. So that would be really great if all young people can start to read more about how current pandemic is linked to climate change as well. Thank you.
Yes, and also adding on that, Mo, Shan, or Pam, if you have anything that you want to share to the audience, please do share on the chat so they can access it directly. And then we can also share with them later after the regional dialogue. So yeah, I think we are done for this session. Thank you so much. Virtual round of applause, please, for Pamela, Mohsen, Shan, and Mai, who you will see again tomorrow. Continue putting on the Mentimeter. And back to you, Jules.
Okay, thank you so much to Dinlong and of course to all our amazing speakers who shared your experiences and contributions to climate action through your own ways. And before we end today's program, of course, I'd like to maybe highlight one of the most striking lines that I've heard in this session. That would be from Shan. She said that doing anything is better than doing nothing, which is really right. We need to trust our efforts and eventually, of course, collaborate with other groups that are doing something concretely for climate action. So once again, thank you, Dinlong, and to all our speakers for our hot seat discussion. And now, as we end day one of the regional dialogue on youth empowerment and climate action, so let's do a very quick recap. Our day one focused on climate promise, a collective action plan. We emphasize collective action because climate action can only be sustained and effective if all sectors will work together regardless of our differences. From the side of the government, we understood the importance of the youth sector's role in climate action. Governments can only do so much. That is why the roles of the private sector and civil society are significant towards collective and inclusive climate action. We've heard narratives from several youth climate advocates and youth entrepreneurs who continue to align their efforts towards more positive impacts in their communities. May our day one inspire you further to ignite your aspirations to be more involved in climate action. So as a final question to all of you who are still here on our Zoom portal right now, what is your climate promise based on your learnings for day one? So you may answer that in our chat box right now, or we may continue our discussions in our Facebook group or even outside that social media platform. In the meantime, please use this opportunity to connect with the hundreds of delegates in this virtual dialogue. Also continue the discussion on your social media accounts using our official hashtag Climate Promise. So that ends our day one. We continue our climate dialogues tomorrow. We'll open our Zoom at 12:45 p.m. Bangkok time. Program begins at 1 p.m. And let me use this opportunity to thank our partners, our co-convening groups. Of course, UNDP Asia Pacific, UNICEF East Asia and Pacific, and UNICEF South Asia, UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center Bangkok, British Council, Youngo, Movers Program, and the 2030 Youth Force Asia Pacific. On behalf of the organizers and co-conveners, I am Jules Giang. Thank you and see you all tomorrow.
Always thought I was loving all the wrong places. Really don't know how we made it here. Never thought I was worth what you give. Never felt quite alive, now I'm living. Yeah, you kill my doubts, they disappear. When I feel like nothing's gonna hold me